Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Council Chambers. Thanks for joining us. Happy New Year. I would like to welcome all members and guests to the January 7th, 2025 Public Hearing Committee meeting. And I'd like to remind everyone that our meetings are web streamed and televised. So if you could take a quick moment to ensure that your phones are on silent, that would be appreciated. If you're using Microsoft Teams, please keep yourself muted and use your hand raise feature icon to be called upon and remove it after you finish speaking. And with that, I call the January 7th, 2025 Public Hearing Committee meeting to order. All members of council, with the exception of Councillor Michelli, are present today. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest today? Seeing none. Looking for a mover and a seconder to approve the agenda as presented. Moved by Councillor Columbus, seconded by Councillor Brunton. All in favor? Hi, Councillor Michelli. Sorry, I see you are joining us virtually, so disregard that. Okay, with that, I now officially open the public meeting held under the Municipal Act, the Planning Act, and County Policy. Please be advised that under the specific Ontario Planning Act as amended by the province, only specified persons and public bodies as defined in the Planning Act may appeal a decision of Norfolk County to the Ontario Land Tribunal. Third parties or anyone who is not a specified person or public body do not have the right to appeal a decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal. However, to preserve the ability to be a party to any appeal to the Ontario Land Tribunal, third parties or general members of the public are required to make comments today, either written or verbal at the podium. These meetings are to allow oral and written comments as input for future decisions on specific development files here today. I'm just wondering how council feels about maybe furthering amending the agenda. We have 4.1, which is the staff report, but we have a full house today, probably not for our staff report. So with 2/3 majority, just reorganize that. Councillor Huffman moves, Councillor Berry seconds. All in favor of reorganizing the agenda? That's carried. Thank you. All right, let's go to item 4.2. The first item is staff report CD 25006, temporary use zoning bylaw renewal, and then we will have item 4.3 and finish with 4.1.
Thank you and good afternoon. Through the chair. So the first item on development applications before you about a temporary use minor zoning amendment, and we have Ms. Wharton is here to provide an overview. Kendall.
Thank you, Brandon. Through the chair, this application seeks to renew an existing temporary use zoning bylaw to facilitate the continued use of a garden suite. As per bylaw 2022-106, this application can be approved by the Director of Planning or a designate. Next slide, please. Oh. Sorry, I'll give Lakin a second. I'll just continue then. The property is located at 1000 Concession 7 Townsend within the geographic hamlet of Waterford. The site is approximately 0.51 hectares and contains a single detached dwelling, a barn, and the existing garden suite. The property is zoned and designated as agricultural, as are the surrounding lands. The existing garden suite would remain as is, with an extension applied to permit its continued use for another 3 years. No technical or public comments have been received for this application at this time. Preliminary considerations relate to housing, as this application will facilitate the continued use of the existing garden suite as mentioned. Oops. In conclusion, staff recommend that report CD 25-006 for development applications at MPL 2024-386 be received for information, that any comments received as part of the meeting today will be considered as part of the decision process, and that the decision be made in accordance with bylaw 2022-106 through delegated approval. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that. Are there any questions from committee to staff? No? Okay, is there anyone in council chambers today that wishes to speak to this report? Is there anyone on the line that wishes to speak to this staff report? Final call? Okay. If we could get the recommendation put up on the screen. That staff report CD 25006 for development application ZNPL 2024-386 be received for information, and that any comments received as part of the statutory public meeting be considered as part of the decision process, and that application ZNPL 2024-386 shall be completed in accordance with the bylaw 2022-106, which delegates approval to the Director of Planning or designate for minor zoning bylaws. Moved by Councillor Van Passen, seconded by Councillor Huffman. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Item 4.3, staff report CD 24-147, Woodway Trail subdivision.
Thank you kindly. So for the next application, we have Mr. Sarah's getting set up to provide an overview. This is subdivision and rezoning application in Simcoe. And when he's ready, and when we have the presentation ready, Fabian, take it away.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Brandon. I wanted to begin by outlining that, the public hearing for this project was initially scheduled for the December 3rd date, but due to the notice needed to be updated in order to capture the blocks for the condominium components within the application, it was rescheduled for the January 7th, which is today's public hearing date. So this application is for a draft plan of subdivision and zoning bylaw amendment. Sorry, I'm gonna switch the slide here. Okay. So this application is for a draft plan of subdivision and zoning bylaw amendment for the property identified as roll number 401015388715, also known as Phase 3 of Woodway Trails. This parcel does not have a civic address at this point in time, and to develop the subdivision consisting of more than 356 dwellings, which is comprised of 140 single detached dwellings, 196 street townhouse units, 20 semi-detached dwellings with the 3 additional proposed condo blocks for mid-rise apartment or townhouse dwellings. To clarify, the municipality has not received unit counts for those 3 condo blocks at this time. The zoning bylaw amendment is required to change the zoning on the subject lands from development zone to various urban residential zonings on the property, specifically R1B, R2, R4, and R6, and special provisions are required for minimum lot frontage and minimum exterior side yard setbacks and other components as well. So the property is located in the urban area of Simcoe and is approximately 20.6 hectares, or about 50.9 acres in size. The surrounding land uses consist predominantly of residential land uses. There are, to the east, there's more residential. To the south, there's hazard land and agricultural. And to the west, there is a forested area with the Simcoe wastewater treatment facility there. Next. Oh, sorry. So the site is designated urban residential, with a small portion of the property is also designated as hazard land in the Norfolk County official plan. And the property is currently zoned as development, with the forested area zoned as hazard land in the Norfolk County zoning bylaw. So as mentioned, this application seeks to approve a plan of subdivision to construct more than 356 dwellings. The zoning bylaw amendment application is proposing to change the zoning from development to R1B for Part 1, from development to R2 for Part 2, from development to R4 for Part 3, from development to R6 for Part 4, from development to R1B for Part 5, and Part 6 is proposed to remain as hazard land, as that is the forested area on the plan. For specifics in regards to the provisions being amended, please refer to either pages 2 and 3 of the report or attachment H, which contains the proposed bylaw. For this application, there was a large list of technical studies that were required for a complete application. This included a planning justification report, a functional servicing report, stormwater management report, traffic study, land use compatibility study, an environmental impact study, in addition to a draft plan of subdivision, phasing plan, zoning plan, and a letter of opinion in regards to the emergency access for the secondary accesses. For transparency, staff met with the proponent and they've agreed to update the technical studies that have been submitted, and this includes but not limited to the archaeological study, a land use compatibility study, the environmental impact study, and the planning justification report, as it does not reference the new PPS statement that was released in Q4 of 2024. So this application was further circulated for comments amongst county agencies. Staff have received technical comments, which can be further found in attachment C. Some comments are still pending from some agencies. Staff have outlined the following key items of consideration, and those for the most part include housing, parking, servicing, accessibility and emergency services, traffic, transportation and emergency services, land use compatibility, the significant woodlot, and the proposed parkland or cash in lieu of parkland. So to speak a bit to each of these components. So in terms of housing, they're providing obviously a lot of homes. There's quite the large variety in terms of options for prospective buyers, whether it be a single, a street townhouse, or a semi. So they're providing some housing options within the urban area of Simcoe, which is a good thing. They appear to meet the parking requirements outlined in Section 4 of the bylaw, but staff have requested an on-street parking plan that will be provided as a part of the recommendation report. For servicing, the subdivision is proposed to be fully municipally serviced, as it is within the urban boundary of Simcoe. In terms of accessibility and emergency services, there's currently one primary entrance into and out of the subdivision. That would be Donnelly Drive South. Through the application, emergency accesses have been proposed through the cemetery to the north and access around the existing stormwater management pond from the previous phase of the subdivision. In terms of traffic, this traffic impact study indicates that there are two proposed emergency accesses, as I just indicated, the one being through the cemetery and then the other one being around the stormwater management pond. The traffic impact study also outlines that potential future updates in terms of signalization may be required. Remedial measures are provided to alleviate traffic concerns as well, and it should be noted that updates to the traffic impact study may be required. In terms of transportation and emergency services, staff continued to dialogue with the developer on concerns of potentially overloading Donnelly Drive, emergency response times, and identified operational concerns at Donnelly Drive and Queensway. In terms of land use compatibility, to the west of the subject lands is where the Simcoe wastewater treatment facility is currently located, and working with the developer to essentially ensure that an appropriate distance is maintained, and while also incorporating the proposed future expansion of the sewage, the Simcoe wastewater treatment facility. And in terms of the significant woodlot, the proposed development abuts a woodlot on its west side. The environmental impact study assessment requires updating the proposal to encumber the abutting lots with a conservation easement in lieu of the land dedicated to the county. And considerations for parkland are also being discussed. Staff have received several public comments, which can be found in attachment D. Some of the comments came in after the item was posted on the on the website and made available. So what I've done was I've printed those copies off and provided the councillors, the mayor, and the clerk with a copy of those, and all those comments and any additional comments that are received after today's date will be included in the recommendation report as well. To summarize at a high level, there's essentially 10 main points, which also mirror staff's comments and considerations. So to outline those, the primary concerns include access, the amount of accesses for getting in and out of the subdivision, as there's only one through Donnelly Drive South, the increased traffic in the area and safety for those in the roads, as well as children playing, concerns about emergency services having appropriate access, parking and street congestion with on-street parking, drainage considerations and stormwater management concerns, not only for the proposed but the existing homes, concerns about increased traffic and construction during specifically the building phase, and the construction of a temporary access or exit road for the construction vehicles not to encumber on the residents within the area, and concerns about not having appropriate park space for children and residents in the subdivision, as well as stormwater management considerations. Attachment D will also, as I've indicated, will be updated to reflect the comments that have been received as a part of this application for the recommendation report. In conclusion, this proposal is for a draft plan of subdivision and zoning bylaw amendment to develop more than 356 dwellings with 3 condo blocks in the urban area of Simcoe. The zoning is to change the zoning from development zone to various urban residential zonings with site-specific provisions attached. Staff recommends that the report CD 24-147 for development applications for the draft plan of subdivision and the zoning bylaw be received for information, and that any comments received at this meeting be considered part of the decision process in any future recommendation. That concludes staff's presentation at this time, and I'd like to outline that the agent is also present and available for any questions they may have. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Members of committee, do you want to pose any questions to staff, or would you like to hear from Mr. Valley first? Come on up, Mr. Valley. You have something on the screen for us today?
There we go. Thank you, Your Worship, and members of council. My name's John Valley. I'm the president at Valley, and with me today is Mr. Paul Halleck, who is the landowner and the applicant here. If we could have the next slide, please. We're happy to present to you a subdivision today which has a number of various housing forms within it, as was explained by Fabian, and we'll go through that as we progress. Next slide, please. We have 5 key points on the slide that we're going to try to get across to you in our 5 minutes. And I think we'll go through these one at a time to give council some comfort that this is a solid application. Next slide, please. Back in 2008, there was an application came to Norfolk County Council for a subdivision, which is what you see before you. The purple area was approved at that time because that's all the municipality had sewage allocation to support. So the rest of it was not draft plan approved. What we're here for today is the green area, which we're calling in general phase 2. And you'll see drawn across the green area, there are blue and red lines. Those are servicing lines, sanitary sewers, storm sewers, water mains that were extended to the purple area, which is now serviced, fully built, in order to service that. So this green area already contains the trunk sewers, water mains, stormwater outlets, all those things in anticipation of this application. If we could have the next slide, please. The Norfolk County official plan designates these lands as urban residential. That decision has been made many, I will say maybe decades ago, that this will be used for residential lands. The official plan supports all the forms of housing that we are proposing within this plan of subdivision. Next slide, please. We've heard loud and clear that there are concerns on traffic and access to the site. We do recognize that Donnelly Drive is the primary access here. It is designated as a collector road in your county official plan. It's important to recognize that it is a collector road. Therefore, the road has been built with a wider pavement than a normal residential local road. It is intended for higher traffic volumes. That is the purpose of designated as a collector. So it is there as the primary access. There is also the secondary access, which is the emergency access, which is existing through the Oakwood Cemetery, and there's a photograph of that access there just shortly after it was constructed. So we do have 2 accesses for emergency purposes. Next slide, please. We've hired, in this case, 2 traffic consultants. We wanted to be sure that we were on solid ground here. So the first one was Paradigm, that did a study. You can see this is the recommendation section of their report. And if you look at the second bullet is what I want to focus on. The accesses via Donnelly Drive, the emergency access through Oakwood Cemetery, the planned emergency access around the stormwater pond are agreed to be adequate access to the subject development. Adequate access to the subject development, in the opinion of Paradigm Consulting Engineers. Next slide, please. We also sent this off to R.C. Spencer, who are also traffic consultants. They reviewed these findings of Paradigm, did their own investigation. To quote from their section, the planned emergency access routes are in keeping with current transportation planning and road safety best practices. In keeping with current transportation planning and road safety best practices. R.C. Spencer Associates, Inc. expresses no operational or safety concerns related to the proposed emergency services access plan. So we're fairly confident that what we're proposing is a solid from a transportation perspective. And if I could have the next slide, please. You'll also note that we have a phasing plan which we've submitted to the county. This shows, we can talk about this and more if council has questions, but we've outlined the phasing plan to provide looping to minimize any dead ends and to alleviate some of the traffic concerns. On the next slide, you will see the ultimate development of these lands. Keep in mind, this is a one part of a 4-part plan. Will ultimately provide 4 accesses. You'll have Donnelly Drive, Oakwood, Decoux Road, and Ireland Road as all major access points in and out of the subdivision. Next slide, please. The setback from the sewage plant has been discussed at length. The D2 compatibility guidelines are from the ministry. And the next slide.
1 minute remaining. You're still good.
I'm good. Thank you. You'll see there's a limiting distance, which is measured from the odor producing source to the residential lot line. So if you could look at the next slide and actually skip to the next one, you'll see that your plant today is 170 meters away from the residential property line. Ministry requirement is 150 recommended, or 100 as a minimum. There is a significant woodlot which occupies that 100-meter minimum. So unless you want to cut down trees to expand your sewage plant, you are going to satisfy the 100-meter setback from your sewage plant. We believe it can be expanded within the guidelines. Next slide. As Fabian said, we've got a plethora of supporting documents here. I'm not going to go through those. In the next slide, what we want to drive home to you today is that we are implementing your official plan. This land is already designated residential in your official plan. It is already zoned development in your zoning bylaw. There should be no surprise to anybody that houses are on the way. With our next slide and our application to you today is simple. It's a draft plan of subdivision for a wide variety of housing forms. You'll have to click a couple times there, thank you. There's no official plan amendment required here. We already comply with the official plan, and it's a simple zoning bylaw amendment to get us into some residential zones. I'm here to answer questions that you may have, and I hope you ask some because it's pretty tough to get this message across in 5 minutes.
Thanks. Good job. Are there questions of committee to Mr. Valley and or staff, however you want to tackle that? Councillor Duthie.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, what is the best way to handle it? Do we want to go to the applicant first and then staff, or?
Why don't we bounce back and forth while we've got them both? They both have microphones, so
Okay.
however you like.
Okay, so if I can ask Fabian first, how many homes are in the first phase that is currently constructed? Approximately.
Do you mean, sorry, through you, madam, do you mean in
The-
phase one of the proposal, or that currently exists today?
That currently exists, it's already built.
I'll have to look into that. I didn't review that, to be honest. I don't know that information off the top of my head.
I think it's about 330
Yeah, I would
or
have to
something.
say it's about the same ballpark.
Yeah, 337, I think is what I read at one point. Okay. I wonder if you had any comments on, it seems to me in the application there's quite a significant number of reductions for setbacks, et cetera. Is there any sort of specific comment that you wanted to share on those at this point? It just feels like a lot.
Yep. Through you, Madam Mayor. We need to review the components in regards to the setbacks, in addition to the reduced lot frontages, as that kind of, there's two components with that. One, the reduced lot frontages makes it more difficult to provide servicing, but also eliminates on-street parking. Staff haven't had a chance to review the on-street parking plan, because I got that yesterday. But we will review that and identify the amount of parking spaces that could, or like what the difference would be if there is a reduction or is not a reduction, and how many spaces that would be a difference of.
Yeah, I think the on-street parking thing is pretty key. If you spend any time over there already, and I can tell you, I spent a lot of time over there, certainly during the campaign, that is one of the resounding comments you hear is traffic parked on both sides of the street and kids playing and running out, and it's pretty difficult. You have to kind of weave back and forth already, so I certainly wouldn't want to see that made worse. I'll maybe ask Mr. Valley, there's no park included here that I could see. Am I wrong?
You're partially correct. There is a block of land, which is the wood lot, which we're designating to be assumed by Norfolk County. The proposal is to build a trail through the wood lot, which would provide walking pedestrian access down to the Lynn Valley Trail. Part of the challenge we've had is it hasn't been clear from staff since our pre-con almost a year ago, whether there is support for a park. We know Norfolk has concerns with the cost of maintaining these kinds of facilities. There are a number of open recreational facilities within less than a kilometer radius of this site. You have a large park at Lindale Heights, for example. You have a Freeman Crescent Park. You have golf courses. You have, although it's not really a park, the cemetery is there, which is used, if you drive in there, it's full of people walking their dogs. St. Joe's School is nearby with a large playground. So there are recreational opportunities, including the Lynn Valley Trail, which is immediately adjacent to the land. So we have not had clear direction as to whether a park is desirable or not from a staff perspective. So we've gone on that assumption that we're going to use this woodlot and create a walking path linking to the Lynn Valley Trail as parkland dedication, and use a part of that, and there would also be a cash in lieu contribution as well.
So thanks for that comment. I will tell you, again, from knocking on a bunch of doors a couple of years ago down there, a recurring theme was certainly around the park and the fact that there isn't one. And when people bought in the first phase, they were told that there was going to be one, and there isn't. And I think there's still some question mark in relation to the cash in lieu from phase one and where that's at and what that looks like. So I guess my question to you at this point is that something that you're opposed to, is actually building a park and setting space for it?
I don't think there's opposition to it. It would be a massive redesign of the plan at this stage. Would have been nice to know that a year ago, but it's definitely something that we can take back to the developer and discuss. I do anticipate there could be a few changes to the plan to address things like parking that you're talking about.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. I think when there's about to be 600 homes over there, it would make sense that there's a play park. Your traffic study, I'll be honest, I'm not with you on that it can substantiate, Donnelly Drive can substantiate that much traffic. If there's 330 homes over there already, I guess I worry, and again, I heard this a lot, if there's an accident at the top end of that subdivision on that one road at Donley before it splits out, you know, if it's closed for any period of time, that's 337 homes already that are cut off. They only have that emergency access, which is through the cemetery, which I don't think we would be too happy about having that many cars driving through the cemetery. So has there been any consideration to providing an access route or a construction route that eventually becomes a road, and how that could, I realize the property doesn't currently border Decoux or Ireland, but is there any communication or dialogue to make that happen?
You're right.
Sorry, excuse me, if we could please refrain so we
Appreciate
can hear
it,
the
but we
guest
don't.
speaker. Thank you.
The land holding of this applicant is exactly what is the limit of what he's applied for. There's a different owner to the south, and then again, as you know, the hub lands are in a third owner. So coordination there is challenging, and you know, we don't have the right to go across other people's property. To the west of our land is land owned by Norfolk County, which is your sewage plant. There is opportunity there, I suppose. There's also opportunity to go through the cemetery again, through an extension of Potts Road, which was looked at back in 2008, 2009, when the original draft plan was approved. There was some concern there because of generating traffic immediately adjacent to St. Joe's School, which is why the emergency access was located on the other side of the cemetery on the east side. So are there opportunities? Yes, there are. We can look at those with county staff and try to resolve some of those issues. But for now, what we're proposing is limited to the land that the applicant actually owns.
Thanks for that. I think in my ideal world, there would be a construction access that's created first before the first phase, some way, shape, or form, and that eventually becomes part of the road. I have a couple more if I can move on. Can I ask Darnell, if you don't mind, regarding the traffic study? I see there are two, and again, I'm not sure I'm fully on board with what those are. Will we peer review those?
Through you, Madam Chair, that is an option for us to do. At this point, we've certainly raised a number of comments that you have raised, along with some of the written submissions in from the public. So I do believe at this point we have the in-house capability to continue that review.
Thanks. I think I read in the report or in the comments it's based on sort of the fire marshal regulations, et cetera. I just wonder if that changes at all based on the sort of the layout at the top end of that subdivision where the access is, and perhaps we can talk about that afterwards, but it does give me some cause for concern. If I can just switch gears to the land use compatibility around the wastewater treatment plant. So I understand a little bit of the concern. The plant right now, this is for ENIS, can it handle the planned development on that land in this application? Or I guess what I'm trying to figure out is what needs to come first.
I think he's asking you.
Through you, Madam Chair, the plant has the capacity to accommodate this plan. The planned expansion works at that plant is, I guess, the question to be further examined through the land use compatibility study. The compatibility study that was submitted examines the site as it exists today without an expanded footprint. We've asked that it look at compatibility with the expanded footprint.
And I think if I understood from the applicant, the setback is 100, is it 150? Is that what you said?
So yeah, if we could go, I don't know if we can go back to that slide on the PowerPoint or not, but the D2 guidelines for separation for a sewage plant of that capacity is set out at a minimum of 100 meters and a recommended of 150 meters. So today, and that separation, it's key to note that that separation, according to the D2 guidelines, is measured from the periphery, and I'm reading right from the guideline, is measured from the periphery of the noise odor producing source structure. So not from the property line, not from the closest building, it's from the odor producing structure to the property line of the sensitive land use, which is the subdivision.
Mr. Valley, you said 170, correct?
No, it's, the MOE requirement
Sorry, not the
is,
requirement, the measurement setback.
today, from the closest building, I don't know where your odor producing source is, but from the closest building to the property line is about 170 meters, 170. And that's just based on snapping it on your GIS system. Okay? So the MOE says you need at least 100, and recommended is 150. So we've got a 70-meter zone there where you could expand your plant, stay within their boundary. That 100-meter setback, ironically, is occupied today by a significant woodlot and a big hill. There's about a 40-foot, 50-foot high hill. So what we're saying is you could expand your sewage plant 70 meters towards the development, and even if the odor-producing source was right against the trees, you would still meet the MOE minimum. If the design of your plant was to keep that odor-producing source, whatever that might be, over on the west side of your expansion, then you could meet the 150 meters. So what we're saying to you is, yes, we recognize there's a sewage plant here. We recognize there are potential expansion at some stage. We have not been provided with any details of that yet, but we are confident that you could expand your plant and still meet these D2 guidelines, which are very specific on their requirements for sewage plants.
And so if I can ask Darnell or Andrew then, so have we done any design or engineering at this point of what the expansion would look like to that wastewater treatment plant?
Through the chair, no, not at this point. We are not in preparation for any sort of expansion. The current plant there does have capacity for our needs for now and somewhere into the future, but it is important to note that building a facility like this is a critical investment, and that's why we have an abundance of land. It allows us to expand, allows us to replace assets in different areas before we decommission others, because as you're aware, we cannot take a plant offline for any period of time. So I also like to point out that the line that Mr. Valley is talking about is not entirely linear. So as you move your way south on that property, it does infringe a little bit closer to below that 100 set point. But certainly at the upper limits, Mr. Valley is correct. There is adequate setback.
Okay. Thanks, Madam Mayor. That's all I have for right now.
Councillor Brunton.
Thank you, Mayor Martin. I have a few questions, as did Councillor Duthie, but I wanted to get something clear in my mind. When this first came before council in 2008, John, were you dealing with all the property up there?
Yes, at that time, the application was for that entire block. So the part that's already developed, that was on, if you remember the slide, was purple, the green that we're proposing, and then the bottom piece, which goes out to Decoux Road, and what we refer to all as the hubland. That was all part of the subdivision application in 2008.
Including the former hublands?
Yes.
Okay. And that's all been looked at in terms of the technical side, in terms of drainage, water, sewer, etc., I assume, was looked at the time. So, but now we're dealing with only this few phases in one section of that. Am I correct?
That is correct. If we could get the PowerPoint back up, maybe that would clarify it.
Well, I'm looking at it, and I guess I'll ask this question next then. When you looked at it, what did council ask when it was looked at as on a whole basis? Did they ask for cash in lieu of parkland or anything like that? Or parks or anything, or was it all, no, we don't need it?
So the slide that is there is what we're referring to, right? So
Right.
the purple area was draft approved back in 2008, 2009. There's another little corner over there that is a darker purple color, which was a separate approval that I was not involved with, but that is also existing and already developed. And at the time, that is all that council had sewage capacity to approve. So that's all that was done. There is no park in that phase. So my memory from 2008 is a little foggy, but I would assume that since there's no park provided, there would have been cash in lieu paid by the developer at that time. The plan that you see there is the plan that was up before council at the time. There is some parkland in the future phases, but I would assume you'd have cash in lieu that was paid in 2008, 2009.
Okay, my next question, you know, I've heard a lot about the traffic concerns in and out of the whole area, or with this phase, these phases, I guess, particularly. But do you know what the AADT traffic count is on Donnelly Drive now that exits this subdivision?
Yeah, we have all that in the traffic report. I can't remember the exact numbers, but Darnell and I have been looking at that extensively. The AADT is within the limits of a collector road. So there's, from a capacity perspective, I believe Darnell may be able to help me here. I think it was around 5,000 cars a day, if I'm correct, Darnell?
So through you, Madam Chair, roughly today on the section of Donnelly leaving the subdivision up to Victoria is around 2,000 vehicles a day today. Okay, and what will the 256, and I assume it's in the traffic study, what would that add to that? 356, I'm sorry. What would that change? Through you, Madam Chair, you're probably going to add about 3,500 additional daily trips across the board. So you would still, the road would still be operating within its typical operating capacity, a collector road within an industrial commercial area, although this does feed into a residential subdivision, is common to operate around 5,000 to 8,000 vehicles a day. So certainly the road is operating at about 50% of that capacity today, and this would take it to its upper level of the threshold as a singular access in and out. However, when the other phases come into being, whenever, you're saying that it would overload and we'd have to go out to Deku or whatever. Is that what you're saying? Those other accesses would come into play and may even reduce the limit on Donnelly?
Certainly when, say, the hublands are developed, they have access directly to Ireland Road and perhaps even to Deku Road. So, yeah, that would provide another arterial, or rather collector access. So that is the approach that has been taken, assuming that those additional connections to Deku Road and to Ireland Side Road would alleviate some of the road congestion off of Donnelly.
Right.
I think it's important to note as well that this particular traffic study that was done by Paradigm, the county asked that we look specifically at, I'm going to guess, a dozen intersections that are far away from this subdivision. Normally we only look at the intersections immediately around the development. We went and looked at every intersection on Donnelly Drive all the way out to the Queensway, and we looked at some on Norfolk Street, and like, it was a far-ranging study. The only intersection in the ultimate condition that showed any signs of distress whatsoever was the intersection of Donnelly Drive and the Queensway, which I don't think is any surprise to anyone. Already a busy intersection and heavily influenced by other development. But we looked at, Donnelly Drive at Victoria, at Lyndale, at Queensway. We looked at Victoria, at Norfolk, and Ireland Road, and all these intersections were all analyzed, and virtually all of them were either a level A or B level of service at the ultimate condition. So from a traffic perspective, the road network can certainly handle that traffic.
Okay, my next question, if I may, Madam Mayor, is in the technical comments, there's comments regarding the school site, or no school site, but I found it unusual. I never have seen this type of comment in a report, but they talk about the availability of housing for school children. Was there any thought given to a school site on this property?
There was not. That was not raised through the pre-con process, which the school boards are part of. Okay. I don't know, I can't speak for the school board on what their plans are for expansion at the Lyndale Heights School, which I would assume would be the one that children from this area would go to. but I can't speak for the school board there.
Yeah, well, it says in the comments, I assume our staff prepared it, but it says that they may have to go to other schools other than that school because it's quite overloaded already if you look at all the portables they have out there.
Yes.
But, okay, and my next question is, and I speak of this need, you're sure we don't know, or somebody can't answer the question about whether we received cash in lieu of parkland way back in 2008. You don't know?
I bet $10 you have, but I can confirm that for you.
Okay. The reason I'm not so concerned about parkland, what I'm going to mention here is the former town of Simcoe tried to buy this farm at one time, and we wanted that farm to expand the cemetery, Oakwood Cemetery. And the reason being, it's going to be landlocked if we don't do something with it. And we tried to buy some of that land, and we were going to sell the rest off. But we've had trouble up there with fencing recent years with people came in and wanted fencing put up along, I guess it's, if I could see your phasing, along the back of what's already there now. And I guess if I could ask that consideration be given to looking at the cemetery requirements versus just plain parkland, or maybe both if we could have it. But I certainly don't want to see the cemetery landlocked. So.
Again, that's not a comment that came to us out of the pre-con, so that's...
Well, I guess I got a little more history on the area than some people, and what I'm saying is we did look seriously at that years ago. So anyways, that's my concern.
Any other questions from committee members? Councillor Columbus.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I just want to mention that we do have a letter here from, I believe it's the owner of the property to the south, Mr. Peter LeBerry, came yesterday in front of, all the councilors got a copy of it today. And to me, this is the key, is the ingress and egress of vehicle traffic into this proposed subdivision. It says there has been no contact by either the applicant or any of the agents with me or any of my agents to discuss the merits or viability of the road pattern proposed. Goes on to say no attempt by the applicant or his agents at any level has occurred to discuss the logical interdevelopment discussions that must occur before any consideration of the proposed plan can be taken seriously. Can you comment on that? Like, why was the applicant to the south not approached to try to solve this?
I certainly can. Can I get that slide, that exact same slide back up, if you could, please? What you're looking at here is the draft plan application, again from 2008, 2009. And Mr. Liberis, who is the owner of the part that is white on this plan, was part of the Zatia Group at the time. And this was the plan that Zatia Group put forward for draft plan approval. So Mr. Liberis was a partner in that. And Mr. Halleck, who is the applicant for the green part, was also a part of the Zatia Group. They were in partnership, and this was the plan that they came up with and developed and made an application to Norfolk County. So when we did our application here for this green part, we were very particular to make sure that we did not change the road pattern as it would connect to Mr. Liberis's lands. So those two road connections at the south end of the green are in exactly the same location that they've always been for the last, I don't know, 14, 15 years. There's been no change there.
So with that, is there any opportunity to communicate and go into discussions to ensure that this is going to happen down the road?
Absolutely. We're open to discussion. We've already had some discussion with the people at Calibrex and the Hub, and we're open to having discussion with Mr. Liberis and his group as well.
Okay. Because the letter states that hasn't happened to date. Okay, thanks. And my next question, Madam Mayor, if I could, Councillor Brunton mentioned the schools, and I didn't see the Catholic school system wasn't mentioned in that report, and I don't know why. They're probably full to capacity too. And These, has this been ran by the roads department? I noticed that the single-family residential lots, some of them are only 18 to 20 feet wide. It's about from here to where Councillor Huffman's sitting. I'm concerned about on-street parking and snow removal and that type of thing. Perhaps Mr. Cridlin can answer that. Whether some discussion's been taking place with respect to lot frontage.
Through you, Madam Chair, I'll take that question. That was certainly one of the comments that we did raise in our technical review. One was pertaining to actually servicing the smaller lots of that size. While we've done it in a couple of rare circumstances to this point, it's really not our preference. But tied with that is the parking discussion. Small lots of that size make it a challenge to deliver on-street parking, especially when that type of development is on both sides of the street, which is laid out in this plan here. So that comment has been raised.
I'm pleased to hear that they're looking into it. Thanks.
Councillor Van Passen, Duthie, then Brunton.
Yes, thanks, Madam Mayor. Went to look at that property and then got thinking and drove a little bit around the block. Is it possible to install a construction access from the sewage treatment plant? It's keep the trucks off the new pavement in the subdivision and have the cement trucks and all the dump trucks come in from the sewage treatment plant. It's only that 100 meters away. Is it possible to punch a road through that way at the developer's expense?
Is that a question to me or Mr. Lambert?
Well, it's to everybody. Is it feasible from our staff perspective to use the existing driveway to the sewage treatment plant and then punch a road up into the subdivision and have the trucks use that access? And is it feasible from the developer's point of view as a good option to make it safer and easier and keep the streets a little safer on the existing properties there?
Of course, I can't speak for the developer on committing funds to building things, but there could presumably be a gravel driveway sort of thing that could provide access from the sewage plant. There's quite a big hill there, but perhaps that could work. I don't know the county's position on construction equipment going through their sewage plant. That's something we could certainly explore with the engineering department as maybe a potential solution. This is not the first time that idea has come forward.
Just through the chair, I guess from the staff perspective, always happy to look at available options. It's certainly feasible. It could work. We would just want to make sure we're not overloading the other streets, also the proximity to the other school. And we will be having ongoing construction there for our future upgrades, not our expansion, but our upgrades to the existing assets. So there'll be additional truck traffic there. So not saying it is not feasible, but it does need further review with our team and looking at some options, but happy to take that away and discuss with the applicant.
Councillor Duthie.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you. Excuse me. Appreciate the suggestion from Councillor Van Passen. I think maybe if I can just circle back, Mr. Valley, is there any, just so I'm clear, you're not opposed to having discussion with Mr. Libiris then about continuing Road A or Street A that's currently laid out on the plan, correct?
I'm not sure which one you're referring to as Street A, I'm sorry.
It's in, if we can just pull that map up again, it's in that one that we've referred to a few times. It goes out to Decoux.
Oh, out to Decoux. Yes, except we don't own that land.
Right, but having some discussion about perhaps just building that road, getting it done, using it as the construction, and then it forms part of whatever the future development then becomes.
Yes, that would all depend on the requirements that adjacent landowner would have, of course.
Yeah, just looking at the issue or the suggestion of putting it through the wastewater treatment plant, I think ultimately there's going to be 600 homes. It needs more than one road. The emergency access through the cemetery is not the answer. Darnell, is the section of Donley from Victoria considered a collector road, or where does the collector road designation end?
Through you, Madam Chair, if my recollection plays out right, Donley Drive is a collector from essentially Woodway Trail all the way up to Queensway Drive.
It is. It's a long stretch. And then potentially if we peer review the traffic study, can we consider what Donley looks like around Lyndale Heights, specifically in morning and afternoons? Because I drive that section daily and it's a disaster. And it's a disaster more so in the winter when you've got snowbanks leaning over the curb and cars are halfway into the middle of the road and there's school buses and other traffic going by and people opening their car doors on the driver's side. I just think we should probably consider that because that intersection then at Rutherford and Donley will back up because it's a small section to Victoria and then again another small section on the other side through to Boswell or whatever that is over there. So if we can just maybe consider that as we peer review.
I've got Councillor Brunton next. I just want to make a comment about the peer review. Maybe this is something for staff, but I'm not entirely sure that's something I believe in. My concern is spending public tax dollars on development when development should pay for development, and we have a developer who's paid for not one, but 2 traffic studies in front of us. So I'm not opposed to a second set of eyes on it, but I guess not. I'm not clear on what your vision of peer review is. Darnell specifically?
Yeah, so I think Darnell referenced earlier that we had the capability in-house to do so.
Okay, as long as that's what you're, okay. Councillor Brunton.
Thank you, Mayor Martin. I just want to, it's unfortunate, we're dealing with 3 different property owners here, but I assume, and I'm going to ask Darnell this question, I guess, if I may, in order to accommodate all of this at some point, we're going to have to oversize some of these services, I assume. Storm, water, sanitary maybe, or looping, I don't know details of it. Can you answer me, Darnell, do you feel comfortable if we approve this section, I guess Mr. Halig's property, I'll use that word, do you feel comfortable we can deal with all these future pieces later on, even though they're oversized? Do you feel we have a means of helping the current owner who's going to oversize things?
Through you, Madam Chair, I believe I understand your question.
Yeah.
If developer A oversizes some infrastructure for the benefit of developer B,
Correct.
How could that be addressed? There are ways and means and some mechanics that could be inserted into the development agreement, which you will eventually see, that could offer some protection for developer A as far as cost recovery goes.
Okay.
That's something we can take away and have further dialogue with developer A on.
Okay, thank you.
Any other committee questions? I have a couple. I maybe would like to echo Councillor Duthie's comments on the road. Earlier I heard about Potts Road, which we just fully reconstructed, so that's not something that we want to use for construction, I would assume. But the cemetery is not the solution, and even if it is construction access on the wastewater treatment plant, that's short-lived. So I really would like to see some discussions on that Road A. My question for staff would be on the Calibrex development. Could you ballpark estimate the distance to that play park, that rec facility that they committed to?
Through you, Madam Chair, if you just hold tight for 1 second.
Yep,
I'm
take your
doing
time.
some measurements on the fly.
Mayor Martin, maybe I could just jump in while we're waiting for Darnell. I think maybe I heard you and maybe I misunderstood. It's not our intention to take construction traffic through the cemetery.
No, sorry, as an emergency exit. to
Yes.
The cemetery.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Through you, Madam Chair, from this development plan, roughly to the small park within the hubland plan, about 1.2 kilometers.
And you say small park in your planning, development, engineering experience. Is that, are you referencing small because you think it's small in context of 600 additional homes on top of the Calibrex? What I'm getting at is I agree with Councillor Duthie as well. We've heard a lot about needing amenities, but if there's a park a stone throw away, I think we should give consideration to that.
Through you, Madam Chair, I use the term small. In my rough estimation, this might house some playground equipment, but would not have, a ball diamond or a soccer field, something that would be more of I'll call it a community park size, more of a parkette.
Calibrex Park had a splash pad and a sensory park. Can we look into that and report back? Thanks. There's a lot of talk about that park. Fruit on the trees. Interesting. Okay, I would like some clarity from either Mr. Valley or staff, I don't care who, on when the plans were amended and changed. I'm looking up on the staff map in our presentation that showed, let's see, page 3, that maybe it's not page 3. Either way, it shows a little bit different of a layout, and I understand that the plan changed, but I guess my specific question at the end of when I get a bit of a timeline so I can map it for myself, on your map, Mr. Valley, with the purple, it's quite literally developing one side of the road and not the other, because that's where the ownership changes over. And so there are some homes on your map in a cul-de-sac. Looks like 2 lots would be done and then the remainder would not be. So I have no experience, to you and staff. My question is, can I get a bit of a timeline on how this plan came forward? And what is the position, what should be the position of council when we have 2 separate owners and they, this could sit indefinitely and the other half may not be developed for a very long time, and it would be on the opposite side of the road of a residential community?
Okay, I think I can clarify the confusion. The map that's here on the screen right now is this is the draft plan application from 2008. Okay? When the land was severed into 2 different ownerships, the white part and the green part, that line was drawn as you see it, the line between the green and the white. So obviously those lots, the cul-de-sac in that area down at the bottom, the very bottom of the green weren't going to work, and that was the plan from 2008. If I could get us to flip back in the presentation a couple of slides. One more. There. You can see that we've done a revision there to get rid of that little cul-de-sac that was at the bottom of the green and create that condo block, which is in purple, but maintain the road on the east and the road on the west that were aligning exactly with the roads in the 2008 plan, and provide temporary cul-de-sacs there until the future connections are made. So the first plan that you're looking at was the old plan from 2008, and this plan is the one that has been submitted, but those 2 roads that connect to the land to the south are in exactly the same position as they always have been.
Okay, so I misunderstood. On this map on the screen, I was looking at the previous phase as development of the former owner, or the other owner, and that's not the case. Those are existing homes, so they're going to back onto existing homes. So it is everything below the purple that would not be developed. So that's not as bad as I thought. I misunderstood that. That's helpful. And what is the date of this plan?
This plan is what we submitted a few months ago.
Okay, thank you. And then my last comment for staff would be, could we just please address on the record the technical comments about education? One, because they're not our comments, they belong to the Grand Erie District School Board. But are you familiar with that comment?
I did see a comment in there that the school board was advising that their school may be at capacity and students may need to be bused, or they may have to adjust their lines for, I don't know what they call them, catchment areas, I'll call it. I did see that. Again, that's their comment. They have not asked for land to be provided to build a new school. I don't think they're in that mode right now. All the discussions and rumors around Elgin Avenue, and then some uncertainty there as to what's happening. But yeah, we can further address that with the school board.
No, not so much for you to do, but I guess important, one, for the public to know that's not a Norfolk County comment, and two, I don't know how much dialoguing occurs when we send these planning applications around. And also, I think somebody, I can't remember, a counselor mentioned the Catholic School Board. It would have been circulated to them, correct? Yes, okay. I guess my position on that comment is it's a ridiculous comment. It's no issue for us to put that in, and they can circulate that to any potential buyers, fine, in the sake of transparency, but that doesn't fix the problem. So quite often we don't hear from the school boards at all, and in this case we're hearing from them, and it just simply says inform homeowners that they may have to bus their children to another school. What they need to be doing is taking a more proactive approach, letting us know their 10-year capital plan and beyond. So I don't know if there's any discussions happening when you're circulating the staff reports, but that response is inadequate. It's not going to help us plan. Anyone else? Okay, how about we receive Mr. Valley's presentation as information, and then we'll go along to public members in attendance. Councillor Van Passen moves, Councillor Huffman seconds. All in favor? That's carried. Thanks, Mr. Valley.
Thank you, Mayor Martin. I would ask that when the public comments are complete, that we be afforded an opportunity to respond.
Sure.
Sorry, through you, Madam Mayor, the public needs to have a chance to speak as well.
Pardon?
Does the public not have the opportunity to speak as well?
Right now.
Okay, sorry. I just wanted to make sure.
Nope, thank you.
Okay.
We have two pre-registered deputations that we'll start with. So item 4.1.1 is Jim Swire. Jim, are you in attendance today? Welcome, Jim. Well, looks like the microphone is on for you. You have 5 minutes, and I can let you know when you have 1 minute remaining, and then councillors can ask you some questions.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor Martin, distinguished council members, and Norfolk County staff. My name is Jim Swire, and I reside on Donnelly Drive South in the Woodway Trail subdivision in Simcoe. There has been considerable discussions throughout the neighborhood regarding the proposed draft plan subdivision application, Woodway Trails, the subdivision phase 2 in Simcoe. I've been asked to speak on behalf of a number of the residents who share common concerns. Our primary concerns are as follows. Construction access route. When we moved into the Woodway Trail, we knew that there would be future development in the farmland west of our homes. We did not know that when the new development would commence, our residential street, which is 25 feet or 7.62 meters wide, was going to become the only construction access route to the site. The construction access route, with the substantial increase in oversized vehicles traffic through our quiet streets, would become a safety hazard for local residents, as well as depriving us of our peace and tranquility, which we have become accustomed to. We believe the better option would be the construction of an access route from 227 Decoux Road. Case in point, the new Port Dover Lynn River Heights Phase 2 development, which is similar to the development which is happening, has the construction access route off of Highway 6. I believe there wouldn't be as many construction vehicles permitted to travel through this settled residential roadway. Retention pond. The existing retention pond is overgrown with weeds and has trouble retaining the overground water which we have when it rains very heavy. Much of the grass area that surrounds the retention pond is wet most of the year, including and which gives us an idea that there might be a drainage issue. Needless to say, we have concerns regarding the drainage and grading plans for the new development. And a recent article in the Norfolk and Tillsonburg paper dated November the 28th, 2024, it did mention Norfolk needs millions more to fix stormwater issues, which illustrates our concerns. Access road. As outlined in the Fire Chief's Guide for Development Design Approval, a development of between 100 and 600 units should have 2 access points. The current Woodway Trail subdivision has over 200 residential units and only 1 fully road access point. A newly constructed 12.6 foot wide, or 3.81 meter wide, emergency access path has been constructed by the developer to meet the minimum requirements on Woodway Trail leading into Oakwood Cemetery. Was the new emergency access path designed and approved by the fire department in accordance with the fire chief's guide for the development design approval? We believe that if there was an emergency within Woodway Trail survey and Donnelly Drive South was blocked off, many of the residents would not make it out of the area using the new emergency access path. Traffic impact study. The traffic impact study was submitted in August of 2024. During which months was I guess the question is, during which months was the study conducted? If it took place during July and August, it would not accurately reflect the traffic that normally takes place on Lynn Valley Elementary School and residents that are on summer vacation. If, as noted in the development application, students may not be able to attend the local schools, therefore requiring busing, which will only add to the roadway congestion. Playgrounds. A playground was originally planned for the first phase of the development through understanding, but for various reasons, never installed. Current plan for the upcoming phase includes open space, but does not specifically include children's playground. The development application overview references cash in lieu of parkland. We require or would like clarification of this for assurance of a park and insurance that a park will be put in place. Some children currently use the community mailboxes as their climber. Surely we can do better than that. Trail access. Currently, residents can access Lynn Valley Trail via pedestrian path adjacent to the water treatment plant. This is a very popular route for residents.
Jim, I forgot to give you your 1 minute notice, so if you could just wrap up shortly, that would
Very
be great.
Good. We believe the pond that was done in the study that was done on the retention pond in 2008, 2009 no longer is accurate. The retention pond in this time is full of peeper frogs in the spring and other species throughout the year. At present, we have also seen many species of animals: deer, fox, coyotes, rabbits, mice, beavers, opossum, and squirrels. A new study should be done so that the inhabit of these and other animals are not duly disrupted. In conclusion, as previously stated, we're not opposed to the proposed development. Is required to sustain the county's growth and provide adequate housing options. We agree. We are fully aware of this is purchase of, we were fully aware of this when we purchased our homes, but we still purchased our homes here in Norfolk because we knew we could enjoy our lives away from the hustle and bustle of the big city. Many of us have spent considerable amount of money to make our exterior spaces and extensions of our homes that we can enjoy the majority of the year. Our enjoyment of these spaces could be dramatically impacted by this development. We just want to ensure the proposed development proceeds safely, efficiently, with adequately concern for the ecology of the area and little disruption to our lives of our community. Thank you very much, and the time to hear concerns, and this concludes my comments.
Thanks, Jim. Sounds reasonable enough to me. Questions? Okay, thank you for coming and speaking. A mover and a seconder, please, to move Jim's deputation as information. Councillor Duthie, Councillor Columbus. All in favor? Carried. Next, we have item 4.1.2 on the agenda, Katherine Cooper. Katherine, the microphone is on for you. You have 5 minutes, and I will remind you when you have 1 minute remaining.
Thank you. Good afternoon, members of the committee and mayor and members of the public. My name is Katherine Cooper, and I'm a land use planner. My firm is Planning Solutions. I'm here on behalf of Bobby and Trevor Franklin, who reside at 11 Basswood Road in the Woodway Trail subdivision. I would also like to take this time to advise everybody that I was the original planner for the original application submitted back in 2008 and 2009 and have direct knowledge of what was applied for that time. And I have to, unfortunately, correct the record. Mr. Valley indicated that at that time, an application was made for draft plan approval for the entire property. It was not. That slide that was put up that shows this being the purple and the green being the current application is not the current application, nor was that green area ever pre-approved. The application, the development that is in existence today occurred over 5 separate applications, 2 of which Mr. Valley's firm was involved in, and I believe 3 of which development engineering was involved in, and all 5 of which I was involved in. The last application, which shows the condo development on the southeast side of Donnelly, was done through site plan and a site plan development application. That was back in the days of Pam Duesling. And at that very time, I can tell you, I was told directly by staff to me as the planner that absolutely no further development in any way, shape, or form would be permitted on any future site in this area when it was solely one property until a second road access was provided and until parkland was provided. The 25 acres which is at the corner of Donnelly and Ireland, was owned separately under a different ownership, different company, and the municipality acquired those lands to put a recreational hub in. Back in, I can't remember the year. Again, Valley Engineering was not involved in that, IBI was. The municipality could not get proper funding, and so those lands were listed for sale. The recreational hub was never never completed because there couldn't get any provincial or federal funding for it. But I can speak firsthand that the proponent, the applicant, we'll say it's Paul Halleck, it's a numbered company that owns the company, and it's not the numbered company that's listed on the application form, so I'm a little bit confused. But Mr. Halleck, I will say, is fully aware, because he heard it from me directly and was party to the discussions with staff, that no further development would be considered until a second road access was provided and until parkland was provided. So I just want to get that out and clear the record. And maybe Mr. Valley could clarify, because I believe he said that the green area on that slide already has sewer, water, and storm. And I could be wrong, but that's what I thought I heard, and it does not. There is no sewer other than down Trillium Road goes directly into the sewage treatment plant, and part of that infrastructure has not been accepted by the municipality. There's still a letter of credit pending on that. There is no existing water, and there certainly isn't any existing storm sewers. So maybe I misunderstood, but I just would like some clarity on that. The plan that was devised, or the concept that you see, was done in 2008. That's a lot of years ago. And what you propose to be developed south of the applicant's land is not what was proposed in 2008, and doesn't reflect certainly good planning in 2024. So at that, sorry, I'll get back to my notes.
With about 1 minute remaining,
I'll
but
be
we do
very
have
quick.
questions afterwards.
I have submitted my concerns and our concerns in writing to staff, and I assume they are part of the package provided. I'll try not to take much more time. I've mentioned the concerns with the lack of park, lack of secondary access, construction access, accommodation for additional growth through the swim, on-street parking, etc. We've noted our concerns regarding the applicant's right to appeal the application directly to the Ontario Land Tribunal 6 weeks from today. This is of great concern, because I don't think this has been properly described or advised to the public. Under the Ontario Planning Act, there is a window called a non-decision window of 120 days from when the municipality deems the application complete. The municipality is to make a decision within those 4 months. And if they don't make a decision to either approve or refuse, the applicant, and only the applicant, has the right to appeal to the Ontario Land Tribunal. That's the province. That takes any local decision away from here. You don't get to make the decision locally anymore. Because the municipality deemed the application complete on October 14th, although there was errors in the application form, it lists a different company owning the land, no archaeological report was submitted, they still deemed it complete, that timeline started clicking. The applicant can appeal to the province, the Ontario Land Tribunal, on February 16th, 2025, 6 weeks from today, and the decision is no longer local.
Sorry, Catherine, I'm going to have to cut you off, but we can go into question period. Any questions? Councillor Brunton.
Just, if I may, Mayor Martin, to the planner, do you recall, was at the time we approved in 2008, whatever we approved, was there any contributions for parkland or?
Cash in lieu was always required in, I believe, the 5 separate agreements. There was 2 subdivision agreements and 3 site plan agreements. Cash in lieu was always a requirement.
Right.
So cash in lieu has been paid by the various applicants or proponents at the time. And it's up to 5% of the value of the lands is how it's calculated under the Planning Act. So yes, cash in lieu was received by the County of Norfolk for the purposes of parkland, but that doesn't mean there's no requirements under the Planning Act or in any of the previous agreements that cash in lieu is to be used to put a park in the subdivision. It can be put, that cash in lieu can be used in Waterford.
Okay, and at that time, you represented both the owners?
Yes, I did.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I was hoping the first question would allow Councillor Duthie.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Through you, Ms. Cooper, thank you for your presentation and being here today. I have not had a chance to fully review the notes that you provided, so I'm wondering if there's any sort of critical elements that you would like to share that you haven't had a chance to already do so.
Yes, there are. Thank you. Again, I think it's essential that everybody understand the applicant's right to appeal in 6 weeks. And it's only his right to appeal if no decision is made. That's it. We can't appeal it, but he can. Clearly from the concerns raised and the numerous errors and omissions in the application and supportive documents, this submission before you is not anywhere near a point of completion where considerations for approval should be given. What is before you is premature in nature and does not represent good planning. Section 51, subsection 24 of the Planning Act is very clear when an application should be approved. And when an application is premature, it should not be approved. This application is premature. Too many questions have been raised by staff and the community that remain unanswered. The proponent's own engineer has indicated almost all of the supportive documents have to be revised. I would like to take this time as well to publicly request from the applicant and his agents that they agree to release all of the supportive documents to the public, that they agree that copies can be provided to the public at the cost of whoever's asking for it. I've been asking for copies of these since November and have been prohibited from getting copies. I've had 2 hours to review what's in that file, and it hasn't been enough time at all. To simply approve this as proposed and suggest that all the issues can be addressed through conditions of draft plan approval is simply irresponsible. Once the municipality grants draft plan approval, servicing allocation is granted. The perceived value of the land is immediately increased for the developer, and the ability for the public to have further input is pretty much null and void. It's left to the developer and staff to finalize, and it's pretty much removed from the public realm. It is the municipality's responsibility to ensure that what is granted draft plan approval is appropriate, is achievable in the timeline. It is responsible and represents the best interests of the community and the overall development goals of the area. The proposal before you does not do that. It simply represents the interests of the developer only. It doesn't represent the interests of the community or adjacent lands. No consideration has been given to the overall needs of this community node in Southeast Simcoe. Needs related to park facilities, traffic flow, walkability, interdevelopment links, for servicing, road flow, traffic flow with adjacent vacant lands and further vacant lands in the area, including what we have been referring to as the Calibrex lands or the former hub lands. It is appropriate and proper for the municipality to require the applicant to initiate a secondary plan approach to the land holding in this area to ensure the requirements of the Planning Act, provincial policy, the official plan for the County of Norfolk, and provincial agency requirements are all addressed. The approach of piecemeal planning in this area should not be encouraged, and this application should be refused or deemed incomplete, or at the very least, the applicant, as a professional and diligent developer, should withdraw the submission and resubmit at a later time when the concerns raised can be addressed. I strongly recommend that council and staff consider the need for a secondary plan. We're talking about phase one here in 2008 and 2009 and what Calibrex is going to do. Let's do a holistic approach. A secondary plan is highly needed here. I would also suggest that it would be helpful if a meeting with the neighborhood could be held in advance of any other further public meetings or decisions. This will allow those most impacted to have direct communication with the developer and his experts to answer questions they may have. When we all work together, respecting each other's comments and concerns related to development, the end result is usually something that most everyone can be happy with. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for your, nope, sorry, everyone, sorry, just keep council decorum, if you could please keep it together. I know it's difficult. Same rules apply to everyone. I would like to just jump in very quickly because I cut you off when you were talking about appeals, which is a very, very important process, but to be equitable with everyone, I needed to stop you to keep on time. So I would like actually a comment from our staff on the timing of this application because council is not made aware of the 120-day window. So can I please have a comment from staff to council on that time frame and where we're at with that?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. So staff are still within the 120-day Planning Act timeline. The application was deemed complete on October 15th of 2024. So that would bring, in terms of 120 days, we'd be looking at roughly February-ish.
So council will need to make a final decision. I'm going to go with Catherine's date of February 16th without looking at a calendar. Otherwise, this application is available to be appealed for non-decision timeline.
That's correct.
Okay. And that is my comments at the beginning of the meeting to everyone who's here who wishes to join and have party status. If there was to be an appeal, you need to be on the record, written or oral. So that was what Katherine was speaking about when I cut her off, to be very transparent. Okay, are there questions? Councillor Duthie, and then Councillor Berry.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Through you, Ms. Cooper, I wonder if you can tell me, so you mentioned that you were previously told by planning staff, who I think are no longer with us, but that under no circumstances any future development would happen without a secondary road or park.
Correct.
Is that in writing? Is it in conditions anywhere?
I probably have it in staff reports. The municipality should certainly have it in their staff reports. It may be even included in some of your historical development applications. I am happy to look through my old records. Mr. Halleck certainly has a complete copy of the file. In fact, he's the only one to have complete copies of the historical files. But I can look through my records, and again, Mr. Valley unfortunately was not involved in the last 2 or 3 phases of the subdivision, so he would not be privy to that information.
I see Fabian's maybe looking through some things. Are we aware of that? Do we have that written anywhere?
I'd have to look into that.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, that's all I have in terms of questions. Mr. Valley did ask for the opportunity to respond, so to various comments, I just leave that with you.
Okay, let's finish up around the table first. Councillor Berry, then Brunton.
Thanks, Mayor. Through you to Brandon. I guess one of the things I want to know here is we've just heard that the application is not complete and is premature. Is the application complete? Can you clarify that, please, for us?
Through the chair, as noted from the planner, the application was previously deemed complete. There were some items that have been identified that needed to be updated for the application and technical studies that need to be updated for the application. And so far, that has been provided and is being provided by the applicant. We continue to review the application because, as noted, there's a number of preliminary issues that have been outlined today from staff, and we've also heard from the committee and from the public as well. So we're continuing to review it. We haven't made any recommendation on whether or not the application would be premature or not at this point in time.
Okay, but it is complete.
Through the chair, the application was deemed complete.
Thank you.
Can I just, you specifically said it was deemed complete October 15th.
Sorry, Catherine, technically not, but maybe a counselor will pick up on your
I have further, yeah.
thought. Counselor Brunton.
Thank you, Mayor Martin. Through you to Catherine. Catherine, you represented both in 2008 on the entire piece of land, correct?
I've represented every application on this entire land holding.
Right.
Up until the application before you now and the consent application separating the parcel of land. Everything else I was involved in.
My question to you is, how was the land separated? Was it by acreage? Or how
The application, the severance itself?
No, you have two different owners now. How
Yes.
was it separated? Were you involved in that?
Yeah, there was an application for severance brought before the Committee of Adjustment for the County of Norfolk,
Yes.
dividing the land holding equally into 51 acres. There's been
So it was done by acreage?
it was done by acres. Each parcel received 51 acres per side.
Yeah.
It was approved locally.
Yes.
Mr. Halleck appealed that severance application to the Ontario Land Tribunal.
Yes.
And approximately 3 days before that hearing, he withdrew his appeal and was in full support of the severance application.
Okay, my question on that is, was it looked at from an engineering standpoint when it was separated by acreage?
Yes. Every agency and every local staff, local department, all supported it. It was fully supported locally.
No,
And
I'm saying, did you or either of your clients, did they hire some engineering firm to say, here's where we want to divide the 51 acres apiece?
it was simply done by 51 acres north and south. Topography was taken into some consideration. In fact, there was a concept sketch that I drafted and proposed to both Mr. Halleck and to Mr. Labiris that showed the proposed separation, and what you have before you is exactly what Mr. Halleck supported. He was the one that picked this concept of separation.
I guess what I'm getting at is that it doesn't sound like it was looked at from a technical standpoint. Doesn't sound like, if you didn't hire somebody to do that.
I don't know what technical components would need to have been done.
Servicing of
Can still all be
catchment
done.
areas and so forth. I see that.
It should
but-
still be done, it can be done, needs to be done, should be done under a secondary plan, or at least a general conceptual plan that includes areas and lands outside of the proponent's sole landholding. Can be done easily and should be done.
Thank you.
Counselor Huffman.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, I guess my question is, you had mentioned earlier in your deputation that you were saying that there was some confusion from when Mr. Valley was speaking, that there was sewage and water, et cetera, there. But you're saying that there is not.
From what I understood Mr. Valley to say, and he can correct the record, but I heard him say that the green area has existing sewer, water, and sanitary and storm.
Okay, that's what I heard as well.
It does not. There are no pipes in the ground there. There is one pipe at a very deep depth that connects the sanitary directly from the sewage treatment plant down Trillium Way.
Okay.
There's a portion of that pipe that has not been accepted by the municipality, and there's an outstanding letter of credit still on that pipe, and it's been in place for probably 9+ years. There's also a water line that goes through there that connects directly into the sewage treatment plant.
Okay.
There are no storm designs.
Nothing.
There's no laterals or water running on the proposed road component at all.
Okay.
That the engineering, your own staff should have that information as-built records are within the municipal documents.
Okay, thank you. I have two more questions. One, I'll follow up with Darnell on that. Can you confirm what infrastructure is in place in this current block of land?
Through the chair, I'll jump in. I asked Darnell another question, and he's been doing some research over there on something else. So I think there's some confusion on what the applicant or what Mr. Valley is discussing. So the area was provided service for a trunk system, so it does exist in the ground, and there was stubs at all of the ends of those streets for future connection. But no, there is no infrastructure installed on those proposed roadways, but the existing trunk system does exist for them to tie into.
All right, thank you. I guess my next question is to Brandon. I'm very confused as to how on October 15th, 2024, the application was deemed complete when you actually stated that there were pieces that were missing in terms of the archaeological piece and some other, excuse me. Could you please explain to me, I don't understand how it could be deemed complete when there were pieces that were missing.
Thanks, through the chair. So at the time, the application was deemed to have included all of the required information and deemed complete. Since that time, there have been some questions about the studies and about some of the items on the application form, some of which have been provided, and some of the studies are being looked at as to needed. There is some follow-up that was done with one of the ministries as it relates to one of the technical studies that was identified, and there is some record of that being registered for these lands. And staff are continuing to review the timeline and the requirements as it relates to this application.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Councillor Van Andrieschie. Councillor Michelli, was that a hand?
Was it?
No.
No, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Ms. Cooper. I appreciate your concerns here. Do you represent any other landholders in the area?
For this application? Pardon me. For this application at this point?
I'm asking if you represent any other landowners in the area.
On the 2177546 Ontario Inc. is the adjacent landowner. I do not represent that company on any other properties.
So you represent no one, and these are just your main concerns?
I represent, I gave you their names, Bobby and Trevor Franklin on 11 Basswood.
Exactly.
Yes.
But I asked if any other land holdings that isn't developed. You don't represent any of those people?
I do not represent as Planning Solutions.
Yes.
No, I do not.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Okay, mover and a seconder to receive Katherine Cooper's deputation as information. Moved by Councillor Columbus, seconded by Councillor Duthie. All in favor? All right. I want to make sure that we're being very transparent here. I know that there are a lot of questions with this application and it is complex, but I also know that planning is subjective. So I want to give a final opportunity for planning or engineering to comment so there is no misunderstanding. Are you standing behind the fact that this application is deemed complete and that in your opinion it is of good planning and you will take into consideration the things you've heard today or not? I don't want to put words in your mouth. I'm asking for clarity because I don't want to leave this with any gray area.
Through the chair, the application was deemed complete. There was some information that was raised and identified that was needed and is being provided.
What does that mean? That's the same answer as before. What does that mean? Information was by staff identified as needed?
Through submissions and commentary that we've received and through further staff review, we've had the update for clarification for the ownership of the application. And there were some questions as it related to one of the technical studies as it relates to archaeological assessment. And we are working with the applicant to receive updated information. We are reviewing the timelines, including through any legal input that we've sought as to the timelines and what we are required to achieve under the Planning Act. We have not made any determination whether or not the application is good planning or not. We don't do that at this point in time until we hear the public comments, until we have received all the technical comments, so we haven't made that determination yet. There is it's a fairly large subdivision, and there are a lot of items that have been raised. So I think that's another point that we heard from one of the deputations too, that we can take and have some dialogue with the applicant about the value of any neighborhood information meeting if we do get more new information, changes, and we go through these issues. We do not have a time frame yet of when we would be having the subsequent report for council that would overview the issues and provide any recommendation.
Okay, so you raise a good point. There is no staff recommendation stating that this is good planning and needs to be approved or denied. That will come at an additional date. And unless there's something in writing from the applicant, it needs to be before council February 16th for a decision. And that's not even a council date, I'm sure of it, mid-month. So all of that to say, staff are standing behind the decision that the application is deemed complete. You have enough information to deem it complete with the exception of ownership and archaeological assessments, which you will have before a decision is made. Is that a summary of what you've just said?
To the chair, we have the updated confirmation of the ownership information that has been completed before today. And we have updated, there is on record for these lands, stage 1 to 3 archaeological assessments have been registered, and through the ministry, there is a requirement for additional archaeological assessment as it relates to at least one of the sites on this land. So that's being identified as a requirement for this application that is needed to assist us in making any decision.
Okay. And you are going to complete that work and put it in a staff report that will have a recommendation attached to it for council's consideration as soon as possible.
To the chair, that is correct. We have not confirmed the date of the council meeting and report. From today, there are a lot of issues that we need to review.
Okay. All right, remind me, Mr. Clerk, did we vote on that and received it as information, Catherine's deputation? Okay, Councillor Huffman?
Thank you, Chair. I guess a question has arisen for me. It seems like a very tight timeline in terms of when it can go to the Land Tribunal. And I'm just wondering, would it be appropriate to ask of the applicant if he would defer any contact with OLT until we actually get this information back from staff? Is that appropriate?
Mr. Valley, I'll put you on the spot because I forgot to come back to you and allow you to answer what Councillor Duthie has raised. So the first question was...
Excuse me. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think a couple of things. Yes, I think we wanted to give Mr. Valley the opportunity to respond to any of the deputations. However, I'm not sure yet if we've asked the room or the members present online. So perhaps it's more prudent to let the rest of the gallery speak and then ask Mr. Valley to respond.
Okay, maybe just for clarity, because you're standing there, can you answer, the question was about your statement specifically about capacity and so on?
So my statements, if you look at that slide that with the green and the purple, and we showed their blue lines and red lines going across the green, and I believe what I said is that the trunk sewers were installed across that land, and that those trunk sewers are there to service the green land, so it has services available, that it is ready to go. Are all the services in all the streets? No, of course they're not. The county would never allow that to happen. But the water main was brought through the sewage treatment plant up the hill, across the field, which is now what we're proposing. That water main was oversized to account for this land. Sanitary sewer was brought up that same hill, across the field, over to the purple land. That sewer was put in at a lower elevation so that it could service Mr. Liberis's land and all the land to the south. So all this engineering has been done to make sure that that all works. I would appreciate, again, a chance to respond after the public has done their comments. However, I do want to make this comment now because council seems to be getting hung up on this complete application and this timeline. So I will tell you that my client has absolutely no intention of appealing this if there's no decision in February. We recognize there's a lot of moving parts here, that there's work to be done with your staff, and we have no intention of doing that. So I don't know why the deputation is focusing on that. The application was complete. There's absolutely no question in our mind. Where the argument has come, quite frankly, and Mr. Sloan's tried to be very careful in choosing his words. I'll be a little bit more blunt. We submitted an archaeological report that was done and paid for by Mr. Halleck and Mr. Liberis 50-50. That Mr. Liberis and Mrs. Cooper took objection to that we would use that report that was paid for 50-50 by those two landowners, and they felt that report could only be used by their 50% and not Mr. Halleck. However, the bottom line is that those reports have gone to the ministry, the clearances have been obtained. There is one site which may need additional study. It's not 100% clear which side of the borderline of the new division that is on, and we are investigating that. But an archaeological report was indeed submitted, and it was challenged by Ms. Cooper and any other party that she may or may not represent. It's the same thing with the EIS. An EIS was submitted. It was recognized in our application that it was old and dated and that it would require an update as a condition of draft plan approval. I want to make sure that council realize what's happening here is being a little bit taken out of context. And the process we're going through is really no different than many of the other subdivisions that come before you. We submit technical studies. When your group says it's complete, we're asked for a technical study for, say, a traffic study. The traffic study comes in this case there were two. Your staff looks at it, they skim through it and say, yes, there's a traffic study here, check, complete. Is there an EIS? Yes, check, complete. If you check the boxes, it's complete. That doesn't mean that staff may have, when they get into detailed review, questions or things that need some clarification, and that is exactly what's happening. For example, in the traffic study, your engineering department has asked us to clarify and look at a few different alternatives. That doesn't mean that study isn't complete. It means it's an ongoing dialogue between us as the developer and Norfolk County. And that is all that's happening here. I don't want county council to be in a panic that in so many weeks from today, there's going to be an appeal to the Ontario Land Tribunal. I will guarantee you there will be no appeal in February, and that we are going to take some time to work with county staff.
Okay, thank you for that. That is great news. I appreciate hearing that from an appeal perspective to buy us some time to work on some of the public concerns. So I just want to take a quick moment to reset here. This is hands down the most complicated, layered planning application I've probably ever dealt with by way of the multiple ownerships, timelines, commitments, plans, and so on. So what we're here to do, to talk about today, is the application that is before us, and provide your feedback back to our staff so they can help and work and meet in the middle with that. So I'm going to turn it back over to the public. If there's anyone here in council chambers that wishes to speak to this file, you are more than welcome to do so. You can come on up to the podium. You need to state your name and your address for the public record, and you'll be given 5 minutes. And we would greatly appreciate it if one person could come up and the next person can kind of wait in the wings on deck there.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm Derek Mangold. I live at 5 Trillium Way. I've lived there with my neighbors
for many years before some of the roads even existed in that subdivision. I can't remember your name, this lady here. Katherine? Thank you. Very informational there. I built subdivisions. I've worked for Empire Homes. I've cut lots of roads. Some of the things that we're talking about, making a secondary access, is almost, it's so much to go from Woodway Trail all the way out to Decoux. It's a very large road. Going through to the sewage treatment plant sounds logical, and I've built many of access roads, had the fire department come in, run their trucks around, and I don't know the rest of the hoopla, but I do the groundwork. But what I did know when I did move into the subdivision, that a park was supposed to be there. My kids are now in their 20s. So a park to me doesn't matter anymore, okay? But your collector road ends at at Woodway. So the collector actually doesn't continue. Me, I would probably come down Donnelly, go down Woodway, and I'm gonna go right by my house with hundreds of trucks, excavators, dump trucks, for months, 3 to 4 months, right? Until another route is possibly drawn up. The storm retention pond, I really hope you guys developed it a long time ago, along with the trunk line. They are very deep. To open up those roads, we have to open up a vast amount of dirt to get down to them if they were not installed properly. I don't know what else to say, guys. So please.
No, that's great. Thank you for your comments. I appreciate that. And sorry, Fabian, is there a book back there for names, public?
There's, sorry,
okay. Derek,
there's
I
actually
apologize.
one on the podium.
Before you sit, there's a book at the podium. If you could just put your name on it.
I'm the only one.
And then when you come on up, if you just fill out the booklet and then state your name and address for the public record. Thanks, Derek.
Good afternoon. My name is Quentin Dixon, 50 Redbud Crescent. I'm here because I've got a lot of issues with the traffic. Right now, we've got 600 vehicles in and out of the Donnelly to Boswell area. And quite frankly, with school buses, with existing vehicles, it's very difficult already. Adding 300 plus construction vehicles parking on the sides of the road, it'll make it impossible for us. I don't know whether anyone here remembers that we had 2 years ago a vehicle fire between Boswell and Woodway Trail. That trapped all of us in for over an hour. We couldn't get in or out. And then the fire department finally opened up a way that we could go through one of the townhomes parking lots and divert. Still, that would technically unacceptable. Now, I think staff did an OMG and did the construction on that laneway. And I'm going to say laneway because that's what it is. It's a one traffic laneway through the cemetery. That they say is open, but it's blocked off to the public. It's locked off. We can't go through it. So what is it really there for? For an ambulance to come in that has a key to that gate to get through? To me, that's unacceptable. And what I would like to see is the Decoux to be used for the incoming construction vehicles to get to all parts of that. No matter the owner, that person still is going to have to use that access from Decoux to get in. There is an already built road coming beside the cemetery, going to the backside of the townhome property in between Boswell and Woodway Trail. That being so, it wouldn't be that much of an expense to branch off of that and go directly into the development of Mr. Hilux. So I don't think that's going to be a big problem. Now you bring into consideration that owners may object. Council and staff have the ability to create a temporary easement for that road. So there's really no pushback that could be done on that. So talk to your staff about that. But that would eliminate all the congestion that we fear. Other than that I see, I don't have any problem with the construction. Everybody's got to live somewhere, and we don't have enough houses for people. So I'm not opposed to construction, and I don't think everybody else is either. We just want to have a light, like our traffic not congested. So other than that, I think that's really what everybody's here for.
All right, thanks, Mr. Dixon. If you would fill out that booklet, that's great. And if there's anyone in the room that wishes to speak next, come on up. Come on up. While we're waiting, I appreciate some of the comments with some active suggestions and acknowledgement that development happens. It's not always the way it goes, so thank you for your comments. You know what, can we move that book back to Fabian so we can keep it, staff?
I'm sorry?
Would you mind passing that book back to the clipboard? Thank you. And then we'll get the next person to fill it out and be ready on deck. Whenever you're ready, go ahead.
Okay, my name's Kirk Stewart. I live at 237 Woodway Trail. I haven't prepared anything, but I've dealt with this stuff a lot through my career. And the one thing I do see here, that road is imperative. If we're not going to get that road in, I don't know how everybody else feels, but I know I don't want my house to be a mess inside. I don't want to pay extra taxes once the roads are all pounded apart. This is all stemmed down to this road. If they put that road in, I'm not opposed to any construction either. But that road is imperative. And I'm sure most of the people that live here will, they'll be up in arms if we don't get that secondary road. It's very important. I am in the belief, though, that the developer and his partner have taken a falling out from what I see here, and now there's going to be money has to be laid out for that secondary road. They're not talking about it, but that's the facts. The bottom line is this developer wants to make money, and I get it. That's what he's in the business of. But if he has to put more out for a park and roadways, so be it. That's really all I've got to say.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming today. Does anyone else in council chambers wish to speak to this file? Okay, if you could fill out the clipboard, if I could get the next person on deck to fill out the clipboard, and we'll keep it rolling. Anyone else in the room wishing to speak? If so, please come on up, fill out the clipboard. Whenever you're ready, state your name and address, please.
My name is Mrs. Hale, H-A-L-E. I live at 9 Hackberry Lane. My husband is here with me, and we wanted to say that we don't have any objection to the building and the new homes, but like the gentleman before me said, the secondary road is imperative for the safety of all the children and all the people, and the damage that could be done to the present roads that we're enjoying now, we would like council to consider. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming.
Hi, my name is Lorenzo DeSantis. I live at 233 Woodway Trail. I'm going to sound like a little bit of a broken record, but kind of relay off of what everyone else is saying. I think the most concerning thing is the secondary road. I don't think anyone's opposed to development. They just want to make sure that the community that's already there, that the last house was built in 2016, stays the same. To have new construction crews going through it kind of alters the community itself. They just want it to be the same and let other people move into the neighborhood, but have it done the right way. Simple as that.
That's great. Thanks very much. Come on up and fill your name out on the booklet, and you'll be after this lady. Whenever you're ready, if you'd state your name, please.
Hello, my name's Marilyn Clare, and I live at 333 Donnelly Drive, South. And one thing that I don't think came up today, which is a big concern to me, is the retention pond behind my house. There's a pond that's heart-shaped, and when we get a rain, that thing floods, it goes to the back. And they're talking in one of the plans to do some kind of emergency road around that pond. That pond is drenched, soaking wet, even in the summertime. There's no way you can put a road behind my house going around that pond to connect to that piece of paved road that comes in off of Trillium. It's just soggy mess. And they put gravel down around that so we can walk our dogs and stuff around it. It's always flooded on the left-hand side. There used to be cement drainage thing, like on one side there's the drainage where it comes in. The other one never got put in, so it's always flooded over there, always. Every time it rains, it floods. So I'm just thinking, what happens when all these other houses come in? Are you going to make that pond bigger? Because otherwise it's just going to be a flooded mess out there. That's my concern.
That's great. Thanks for coming.
Okay.
I believe there is a secondary stormwater retention pond. Come on up, sir. If anyone else wishes to speak, if you could visit staff, get your name signed in.
Yeah, Mayor and council members. I live at 1 Trillium Way. My name is Kerry Bushell. I guess I got to say that first. I live at 1 Trillium Way, so we're right on that corner of Woodway Trail and Trillium. We moved in there in 2014, and it's been a really good place for us to live. Now, the one thing I did do, within about a year of being in there, I phoned the roads department, basically 9 years ago, and asked about another road. There was nothing going up to the cemetery. There was no other road. They should have put a no exit sign right where the hydro yard is, or dead end, because that's what it was and has been for over 9 years, maybe 10 years. So why was that not done? And right now it's the same thing. So that needs to be done. Dead end sign right there, because it is a dead end and has been right from day one, as far as I know. They told me the new road, or another road, would be going in when phase 2 starts. Where is it? It's not there. We don't see any construction going on. So I think you really need to think about this. We're the people, we're the constituents that are paying taxes in there and enjoying living there. You need to think about this and seriously put in that other road out to DeQ or out to Ireland or whatever works, or a service road for sure, for these construction vehicles to come and go, not through the existing subdivision that's there now. That's it.
Okay, thank you for coming.
I'm Ashley Hill. I live at 352 Donley Drive South. Again, about the second road. On December 16th, 2024, there was a gas leak over by the annex building. Thankfully, it was not blocked off, but the cemetery emergency access was completely blocked off as the gas leak was over by that building. So, as I'm saying, the emergency exit right now is not sufficient. Have there be a natural disaster like that. We need that second road out to Decoux.
Thanks for coming, Ashley. If you would, perfect, you got it. Okay, I'm assuming no one else wants to speak because no one's on deck. Final call. Is there anyone on the line that wishes to speak, tuning in virtually today? I don't see any. So with that, I would look to council for a motion to receive all of the public comments as information. And I'm not going to get them all right, but we had Derek, we had Mr. Dixon, we had Kurt, Mrs. Hale, I believe DeSantis was the name, Mrs. Claire, Ashley Hill, and this last gentleman that we'll get them. We've got them written
Carrie
down.
Bushel, and the first one was Derek Margot.
Thank you.
Sorry if I butchered the pronunciation.
Mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Columbus, Councillor Duthie, all in favor? All received as information. Okay. With that, we're back to the staff report. So the staff report is just to receive it as information, no decisions being made. So if everybody is interested in skedaddling, I can give you a couple of minutes to get up and we'll wait if you'd like. Okay. Council, let's take a 5-minute break, come back at 5:10. Soon after, members of council and I took our seats right here in council chambers last November, we began to plan the direction we'd like to see Norfolk County take over the next 4 years and beyond. A direction that builds on our strengths and sets a strong foundation in place for future generations. We looked outward to the people of Norfolk for input. We listened to you, the valued members of our community, from our sandy lake shores, our vibrant downtowns, our picturesque countryside, and our bountiful farmland. We engaged leaders from local businesses and community agencies. We gathered ideas from our team across the county. Based on what we've heard, we created Our Future Norfolk, a set of priorities that focuses on 5 key areas: empowering Norfolk, building Norfolk, connecting Norfolk, serving Norfolk, and sustaining Norfolk. These priorities, along with the initiatives and activities that drive them, will guide council and staff as we work together to serve you and all of the members of our community over the next 4 years. On behalf of Norfolk County Council and staff, we invite you to check out our website at norfolkcounty.ca/Our Future Norfolk and return frequently to learn more about our path to a vibrant and strong future for all of us, now and in the years to come.
Hi, I am Mohammed from Norfolk County Planning Department. We get a lot of questions at the Planning Department, and this video series will answer some of those. The first big question is, what is the official plan? Norfolk County's official plan describes Council's policy on how lands in our community should be used, managed, and developed. It is prepared with community input and helps to ensure the future planning and development will meet the specific needs of our community. An official plan includes issues such as where new housing, industry, offices, and shops will be located, and what services like roads, water mains, sewers, parks, and schools will be needed. It also defines when and in what order our community will grow and outlines community improvement initiatives. The official plan is approved by the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing in Ontario. The current official plan was adopted in 2016 with a goal to manage the growth of this county for the next 20 years. Residents can see Norfolk County official plan on our website at norfolkcounty.ca/official plan. What is a secondary plan? A secondary plan is a more detailed policy document embedded within the official plan to address the growth and development issues unique to a specific area of the county. For example, the lakeshore area in Norfolk County or a particular urban area with defined characteristics can be a secondary plan. As I mentioned, it is a more detailed policy document. It provides directions on where future development will occur with a guideline on density, road access, infrastructure services, different building types, building heights, or even design guidelines that are compatible to that specific area. In Norfolk County, there is only one secondary plan at this moment, which is the Lakeshore Special Policy Area Secondary Plan. The Port Dover Secondary Plan would be the second plan the county is working on at this moment. What does the land use designation of a property mean? Norfolk County's official plan also identifies how individual land or a group of lands will be used, and this is done by the land use designation. In Norfolk County, a lot of lands have been designated as agricultural. Some areas have been designated as hazard lands because of their specific natural features. An example would be the natural creeks, streams, rivers, or shoreline areas. Some lands have been designated as residential, commercial, or industrial to efficiently manage the growth of specific land use. Each land designation has rules about the kind of development allowed. The official plan uses growth management data to identify where and how much growth will occur in the next 20 years. In accordance with the provincial requirement, Norfolk County reviews and updates these growth areas every 5 years. What is the process of changing an official plan designation? A landowner can request to change the designation of the land through an official plan amendment application. This change requires a public hearing meeting and council's decision. A landowner needs to consult with a planner to get more information about this process and to identify the required documents they must submit. Any official plan amendment needs to conform to the provincial policy statement, which is a planning policy document that affects all municipalities across Ontario. This provincial policy statement is currently under review and may change in the future. To learn more about planning in Norfolk County, visit our website at norfolkcounty.ca/planning or contact the planning team at 519-426-5870 or 226 Norfolk, extension 1842. Or email planning@norfolkcounty.ca. Thanks for watching.
Hi, I'm Jacob, and I'm here to take you behind the scenes on a capital project in Norfolk County. We begin planning capital projects by analyzing our infrastructure needs related to roads, water mains, storm and sanitary sewers, as well as bridges. We assess their overall condition, age, and servicing requirements. This provides a solid foundation to ensure Norfolk has the hard infrastructure for current and future needs. Once a project is determined and approved by Council, we retain an engineer to complete the design. During this stage, we engage the public through public information centers or postings on the county website to inform them of the upcoming project and provide an opportunity to share feedback. After the design is completed and all approvals are in place, we hire a contractor through a public bidding process. During the construction phase, we track progress, budget, and continue to engage with the public. We also work with other departments to ensure the overall success of the project. Once complete, we report and track any warranty issues for 2 years. We measure a project's success by its ability to enhance infrastructure and positively impact residents. As a Norfolk County employee, I enjoy building the community that has given me so much. Thank you for taking the time to join me on this behind-the-scenes tour.
We all have the right to feel safe at work, when spending time with friends and family, when participating in activities or attending a public meeting or event. Norfolk County is committed to ensuring our spaces and workplaces are safe. Our respect and responsibility policy outlines the code of conduct for employees, patrons, contractors, volunteers, coaches, and spectators. This code of conduct also applies to phone calls, emails, and virtual and social media platforms. We all play a part in fostering a respectful and safe environment. Inappropriate behaviors such as swearing, name-calling, verbal and physical threats, physical violence, harassment, and vandalism will not be tolerated. Staff have the right to take action when incidents occur. This may include denying service, asking individuals to leave, contacting the police, or, if necessary, suspending them from county programs and facilities. Those responsible for damaging county property will be required to cover the cost of repairs, fees, and lost revenues. We are committed to providing high-quality customer service and a safe and respectful environment for all. For more information about our respect and responsibility policy, visit norfolkcounty.ca/R&R.
Hi, I'm Hannah from the Norfolk County Planning Department. We receive many questions at the Planning Department, and this video series will answer some of those, like, what types of planning applications are there? There are 4 main types of planning applications for different needs. First, there are minor variances and different types of severances. These are reviewed by Norfolk County's Committee of Adjustment. An example of a minor variance is when a garage is being built closer to a property line or is taller than what is permitted in the zoning bylaw. An example of a consent to sever is creating a new lot to allow for a new house. Second, are zoning bylaw and official plan amendments that are considered at council. An example is changing the permission in an urban area to allow for a triplex where a single detached dwelling is permitted. Third, are applications that Ontario's Planning Act gives Norfolk County's Planning Department authority to approve. For example, a draft plan of condominium or subdivision, which are types of applications which enable the division of land for future housing. And fourth, are applications which rely on approval from another regulator, such as telecommunications towers and hazard land boundary line adjustments. As a resident, when do I need to submit a planning application? For the average homeowner, a planning application may be required if your project does not meet the requirements of the zoning bylaw or official plan, or your property falls under site plan control. The building department will let you know that a planning application is required. If you want to change the boundaries of your lot, create an easement, or create a new lot from your property, you will need to apply for a consent to sever with the planning department. What is a pre-consultation meeting? A pre-consultation meeting is the first step of a planning application and allows staff to clarify the application process and provide a checklist of documents required. A complete application can reduce the time required for review and decision-making. Applications that must undergo a pre-consultation meeting before the application can be submitted include official plan amendments, zoning bylaw amendments, draft plans of subdivision, draft plans of condominium, and site plan applications. A meeting may also be required for certain Committee of Adjustment applications. To learn more about planning in Norfolk County, visit our website at norfolkcounty.ca/planning or contact the planning team at 519-426-5870 or 226 Norfolk, extension 1842. You can also email planning@norfolkcounty.ca. Thanks for watching. Hi, I'm Hannah from the Norfolk County Planning Department. We receive many questions at the Planning Department, and this video series will answer some of those. A common question is, what is zoning? Zoning is a way of categorizing how land can be used. Norfolk County has identified through its zoning bylaw different land use zones, for example, commercial, agricultural, or residential, what they can be used for, and any required standards, for example, building size and location. Zoning must be maintained by any development or activity that has started from the date the zoning bylaw has been passed by the county. What is the process of changing a zoning bylaw? A common reason that residents are referred to the Planning Department is because their proposal does not meet the current zoning bylaw provisions. If a landowner wants to change the land use from what is permitted in the existing zoning, a change in the zoning bylaw would be required. For example, changing the permission from only a single detached dwelling to expand the permission to build a triplex. This is called a zoning bylaw amendment, and it requires council's approval. A planning application known as a minor variance can be submitted for a minor change in the zoning bylaw, such as the height or size of a structure. Minor variances are reviewed by the Committee of Adjustment that is made up of citizen members who are appointed by Council. The committee is governed by the Planning Act and holds public meetings to approve applications for minor variances and consents. A minor variance must meet the 4 tests to be approved. 1, the change is minor. 2, the development is desirable for the appropriate use of the land, building, or structure. 3, the change maintains the general intent and purpose of the official plan. And 4, the change maintains the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw. What happens after a decision is made by the Committee of Adjustment? If the committee approves an application,
Okay, let's continue. We have the recommendation on the screen before you. And I'd be looking for a mover and a seconder, please, to receive the report for CD 24-147 Development Application 28 TPL 2024-308 and ZNPL 2024-307 be received for information, and that any comments received as part of the statutory public meeting be considered in a future recommendation staff report. Moved by Councillor Duthie, seconded by Councillor Brunton. All in favor? That is carried. And we're moving along to our last item, which was our first item. Thanks, staff, for your patience. We had a full gallery here of community members. Staff report CD 2501. It is concerning the community improvement plan. Mr. Sloan.
Thank you. So our last item here, the CIP update. So as part of our economic incentives, Norfolk has utilized a community improvement plan, or CIP for short, which is a tool under the Ontario Planning Act to establish and run our current 9 programs over the last several years. These have been fairly successful, and the annual process is utilized by many property owners for improvements to things such as building facades, structures, residential conversions, application fees, and environmental. So one of the 2024 priorities within the economic development strategy was to update the CIP. So our consultant, J.L. Richards and Associate, has undertaken a review, prepared an updated plan, and conducted a public engagement process. They'll provide an overview presentation today and then available for questions and feedback. The intent for today is to receive any comments as part of this public meeting, and then our consultant and staff will review any issues, prepare any updates for a final plan as part of a subsequent council report for consideration. So with that, I'll turn it over to Marilyn Cameron and Lorelei Spencer from J.L. Richards.
Thank you so much, through you, Madam Chair. Lorelei Spencer and Marilyn Cameron. We've been working on this project and have had a very exciting time doing so. So I think Brandon gave you a very good outlook on what this is intended to provide for you in order to provide incentives for the intent of the program to move forward, to bring upbeat to the community, etc. There are some components that will need to be considered with respect to dollar amounts, etc., but that's a council decision. I think also we need to understand that this is not yet approved, and we need to just kind of take a look at what it looks like from a public perspective to identify whether those amounts are correct or not, and identify what those look like in the future. Community improvement plan is intended to intensify and incentivize what could be and what could look like, not what year 1, not year 2. It might look like year 5 in some cases. So I think it's very important for those things to be considered as we navigate through the process. I'm going to turn it over to Marilyn at this point, and she's going to provide you with a very thorough update of what that looks like. Again, let's remember, this has to still go to council. There's lots of consideration, so comments are welcome.
Thank you. Okay, and I assume you can see my screen here. Please interrupt me if you can't. Thanks for that introduction. I'll briefly go over what we'll talk about quickly tonight. So first, a rough overview of a CIP, not much more than what Brandon already briefed you on there, but you're all familiar. County has had a CIP in place for since 2007. We'll go over the project and what's been happening and where we're at. And then the major part of this presentation will be the summary of the changes in the draft document that you have in your agenda package, and then some next steps. So, as mentioned, a CIP is a financial incentive tool. This isn't new for Norfolk. You've had one in place since 2007. It was updated in 2015, and this is a further update again. So it provides grants and tax incentives for private property owners to create some kind of community improvement. And that community improvement is outlined in the county's official plan. It can apply to repair, conversion, new construction, and rehabilitation. And it can apply to a range of topics, but essentially the key focus is to spur on economic development very broadly. So you see a range of topics there: housing, all types of land use, accessibility, and we'll be going over some of those. So here are your 9 existing incentives. These are the ones in place since 2015. And they are structured in 3 categories. You have pre-development or study to help with upfront costs, and then 5 grants that cover really the bulk of the work and the costs associated with carrying out the improvement. And then finally, a tax incentive, which provides support with the later costs of tax increases associated with improvement. And these are all based on a 50-50 matching grant up to the values you see here. I won't go into a ton of detail because we want to keep things quick tonight, but happy to answer questions after. So it was a 3-phase approach to carrying out this review project, and we are currently at the final phase. But what's been done to date, we did quite a bit of kickoff and discussion with staff, and we carried out background research over the summer period, which included public consultation. I'll talk more about that in a moment. And it was also shared more recently with the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing for their comments as well. The draft has been circulated since an open house in November, and so public comment has been, we've made it available for public comment to tonight's meeting as well. And so we're here at the statutory public meeting. This is a requirement under the Planning Act, but as mentioned by Laura Lee, this isn't a decisional meeting tonight. We're here to hear your feedback, any public comments, and answer any questions of clarity. And then once, following this meeting, once we have final direction, we'll be preparing a final CIP, and that will go to council for adoption. So the community engagement. For this project, staff identified 4 key stakeholder groups that they wanted to speak to. So that was the agricultural community, the small business community, development and home builders, and the general public. So we carried out 2 focus groups with small business and home builders and development community. And then we also met with the Agricultural Advisory Committee for a 3rd meeting. We also wanted to take advantage of the long history of the CIP program and speak with past CIP applicants and get their feedback. So through an email survey, we got very valuable detailed feedback and great responses there. And then a public open house was held on November 6th, where the draft CIP was presented. From there, the updated CIP is in front of you and has been revised, and I'll just briefly go over the updates and the major changes that have happened since since your current version, essentially. So the goals and objectives, these are very important for defining what the incentives will be, and they were updated to keep up with some of the emerging issues in Norfolk County. Updates related to sustainable development, looking at a greater focus placed on housing, particularly rental and affordability, just changing up the language to cover a wide range of character across the county, and to speak to economic viability for the agricultural community. So that was made just a little more explicit. And then the big piece here is the update of the map, which you can see on the screen. So previously the CIP, or the current CIP, uses the zones of the zoning bylaw to differentiate eligibility between incentives. And there was a bit of feedback that that was less than clear and less flexible for applicants. So for simplicity for staff use, this map now divides the county essentially into 4 areas, and the incentives are categorized as eligible within those 4 areas. It's really important to note, though, that all applications will still be required to comply with the zoning bylaw and conform to the official plan. That has not changed. It's just a matter of making it a little more user-friendly for applicants and for staff to streamline that application receival process. There are 2 new incentives in the draft before you proposed. So the first of these is for additional residential units, rental housing, and affordable housing. This is one grant with a long title. And the idea is to encourage creation of new housing units or the conversion of non-residential space to residential units. So this grant supports $4,000 for up to 2 units to be built, again at a matching 50-50 contribution. And it's applicable everywhere except the agricultural area. So that's the major new one, and that actually replaces the previous residential conversion grant. And then the second new one is a brownfield tax increment grant. So just like the existing tax increment grant, this is calculated based on the difference in assessed value before and after community improvement work has taken place. And that calculation is set for a 10-year period and decreases over that period. So the support provided decreases and is meant to help with the transition to that higher tax assessment value. And the intent of this is just to have a separate one specific for brownfield remediation. So because these agreements typically have very specific conditions related to the rehabilitation of the land, for simplicity and for clarity, this has been made into a separate application and hopefully will further incentivize brownfield redevelopment. So 2 grants have been renamed as well. The Accessibility and Safety Renovation Grant is the former Structural Improvement Grant. And then the Agricultural and On-Farm Diversified Uses Grant is an updated name for the former Agricultural Grant. The intent of this was generally just to improve ease of use for applicants. But in the case of the agricultural grant, we've also expanded the eligibility to include on-farm diversified uses and agriculture-related uses. And the main crux of this is just that since the previous grant in 2015, the province has outlined different guidelines for permitted uses on agricultural lands, and we want to make sure that the economic opportunities that are available to farmers are made clear through this process and that there is funding available to them. So it's more just a language change in these cases. And then the Architectural and Design Services Grant is one of your current grants that we've proposed to consolidate within all the other grants. So essentially the architectural and professional services provided under that previous grant make sense as eligible costs for pretty much every improvement listed. So we felt for simplicity and flexibility, this could be consolidated. And so the wording of that has now been consolidated into the other grants. And the amount, you'll notice the $1,500 that was originally eligible for that grant has been added to all of the other applicable grants to just further that consolidation and make sure that funding is still available to applicants, but it's a simpler process. There's no second grant to apply for. Similarly, the planning application fees and building permit fees grant. Previously, there were 2 sort of categories for different types of fees and 2 different funding amounts, and that has just been streamlined into all eligible fees can be covered under that grant as they were before, but they don't need to be specified differently anymore. And the upset limit for that grant was increased slightly to represent some of the real costs for those fees to $4,000. And then, as mentioned, the residential conversion and rehabilitation grant has been removed because it is now encompassed in the other housing grant proposed. And then there are a few updates made to implementation of the plan as well. So the major one of these is the creation of 2 intake windows per year rather than the current rolling application process. And the main reason for this is to help with staff resourcing and capacity. With the current process, the CIP has been successful and applications come in anytime during the year. And staff want to make sure that they can be responsive to that while also maintaining their other priorities. So by setting a firm intake window, they can plan capacity for that and have a sense of what to expect for those windows. And then the idea behind having 2 intake windows throughout a given program year is to allow some flexibility for applicants who, might not be ready for that first intake window and then can apply later as well. We'd also recommend that the 2 intake windows have earmarked funds for each of them so that we don't exhaust all funds at that first intake window in the year, and folks who maybe didn't have a chance to apply for that intake window are not left without further funding towards the end of the year. Let's plan for it to be wildly successful, right? And then, so other details, a new agreement template is proposed to just help with security and clarity on all of the requirements to fulfill any application that is approved. And there would be a separate template for the tax increment grants as well. A glossary has been added to this CIP. This is for consistency with the PPS 2024, and as well to add general definitions for applicants who might not be familiar with some of these Planning Act terms. And then we are also proposing a set of tools to help with evaluation and monitoring of the CIP to make sure that staff can monitor and show the effectiveness of it. So that was a quick overview, and here's a brief summary of the proposed incentives altogether. So again, there are still 9 grants proposed, the addition of the Brownfield Tax Increment Grant, and in summary, if I could summarize it briefly, essentially the idea behind the 7 incentives proposed to continue and to be updated is to really streamline the existing opportunities and expand focus on some of the priority areas that we heard through consultation and that staff have identified, for example, housing, and then to improve flexibility for applicants and implementation for staff. So that kind of brings us to where we are now, and that is that the version you have before you, we are here today to hear your comments and answer any questions of clarity and identify any revisions that need to be made. And actually, since the time the agenda package was assembled and this meeting, we have identified a few items that are from staff who have flagged some great questions through CIP applicants that they've been speaking to just over the past few weeks or months. And so we have a few changes that we would like to make, even to the version that you have in front of you. So what we're proposing here is to clarify some of the language about existing versus vacant buildings or properties. So generally the intent of the CIP is to encourage improvement for existing buildings and underutilized properties, but there are 2 cases for housing and for any new construction for an on-farm diversified use where there is some flexibility there. We might want new construction in those cases. So that's where those 2 changes are proposed, and then some grammatical and editorial changes for clarity and ease of use again. So those are proposed, and that's one of our next steps, just to make changes based on any direction received this evening, and present a final CIP to council at a later date. So we, Lorelei and I, are happy to take any questions now.
Okay, thank you very much. Questions from council members? Councillor Columbus.
Thank you. Good report. Just with respect to the background report, I noticed that the number of applications received has dropped from 20 in 2021, 22 in 2022, and it dropped down to 10 in 2023 and 14 in 2024. So what do you see as the reason? Is there something going on there that we should be aware of that as to why the number of applications dropped?
Thank you. Or Laura, you go ahead.
Yeah, if I may, through you, Madam Chair, I think the issue is about what the program really results in, and I think there's significant delay. So residents are not prepared to necessarily understand they have a grant, essentially, to support them, but they have to pay up front. So it's really about the propositioning of how you make that look and what you make that look like for yourselves. And Norfolk County needs to maybe do a little bit more to advocate for that component. I think that's the biggest factor. And it's not just you, it's every other CIP that we do for other municipalities. It's the same issue. They just don't know about it. They don't understand it. And they're worried about it because they don't understand what it means. So if you need to have a successful promotional component, that's something else we can do for you. But again, I think that's the biggest issue.
Through the chair, if I may help supplement that, just on those timeframes. So for some context, in 2020, the CIP program was put on pause during that initial pandemic year. So we actually had no applications really that went through that year. So there was a bit of pent-up demand for when it came back in 21 and 22, hence the higher numbers there. 2023, unfortunately, we were in a shortage with our economic development area. So as was kind of outlined, we did not have an opportunity to promote the program or seeking out additional applicants at that time, and unfortunately wasn't a priority. But if applications were aware of it and came in, we processed. 2024, some update, I guess, from staff is that we have now reached our committed limit. So this was as the background study timeframe was prepared, but for 2024, we have more than 14. We're up to the committed 139,000.
Very good. I got a second question, Madam Mayor, if I could. And it's if an individual in downtown owns two separate properties, is he eligible for two grants, one on each property?
Yeah, please.
If I may, through you, Madam Chair. Yes. So as it has been displayed to you for consideration through council, at this point in time, they are eligible to apply for each separate property on limited streams. So yes, if they own two properties that are abutting each other, that doesn't matter. If they own them around the corner, it doesn't matter. They're still eligible for those components of a contribution toward what they would like to improve.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Van Andriesche, then Barry.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you. A question of the budgeting. How much is budgeted for the CIP program? I guess that would be
Through the chair, there's $139,000 per year has been budgeted for a while. Yeah.
And I don't anticipate a problem, but just out of curiosity, are they judged by first in, first out, or how does that? If you have a large number of people applying for a particular grant, how do you either differentiate, or how do you restrict, or how do you do that if it happens to go over the budgeted number?
Through the chair, that's essentially correct. So far, it's been first come, first serve, and there are a number of categories. There are limits for each category and for each applicant as to how much that they could receive, but essentially that's how it's been so far, which might mean that later in the year, there could be a really good proposal, but the funding may have been utilized. And I think we've had that in some of the previous years. So that's one of the recommendations that through the consultants and staff looking at is having the two different intake windows. We're not necessarily right now recommending to increase the budget, but we would within those windows shuffle around some of the maximum eligible amount that you would have for some of them to get on our higher objectives. Should council wish to in future years or currently provide some direction to hit some of these objectives a little bit more, because to be honest, when you look at some of these and it's okay, 5,000 for a residential unit, how much will that really help? We could make a bigger impact if there was more to the incentive program. That's currently not proposed, but that is a consideration.
Councillor Barry.
Thanks, Mayor. I don't know if this is a question for Brandon or for the presenter there, but I've had questions from a couple businesses about when they have two different businesses at the same address. They're wondering if we could make, right now you're allowed to have one per address or one per, I guess, corporate registry, even if they have two different businesses operating. And I'm wondering if you've ever, I guess to the presenter there, if you've ever seen a plan that did allow for that, and what your thoughts are on that. And then maybe I could throw the same question to Brandon. You know, could we look at an update here where if it's two separate businesses operating in one address, could we give them grants if they're willing to invest that much? Why say no to two different signages or three or how many ever? Okay.
Through you, Chair, I'm happy to respond to that.
Please.
Yeah. So essentially, the way it works now is by property. So the property owner or an agent that they designate is the applicant. So if they operate two different companies on the same property, or if they have two different tenants who would like to apply, they could do so separately. But it's up to the property address, essentially.
Through the mayor again, thanks. I understand how it is. What I'm asking is have you ever had an example before where, yes, there are two businesses, and yes, it's the same address, and maybe it's even the same owner that is operating two different businesses out of the same property? Could both businesses with different signs, with different entry points, with different facades, whatever, could they both potentially be eligible? Is that something that there is you've seen before, and is that a recommendation that we could make for an update to our plan that is worth doing, or does that put us into trouble? Or could you speak to how reasonable is that to ask that question?
Through you, Chair, I'm not familiar with an example of that. I probably have to do a bit of thinking about that. There's no reason that they couldn't currently apply simultaneously and carry out separate applications, so long as the property owner consented, or if it was the property owner, there'd be no issue there. So that could take place. The only stipulation that currently would be in place limiting that is the cap that no application exceed a $20,000 limit per property. So it's a consideration, particularly for this update or for future years of your CIP, if you wanted to reevaluate that. Absolutely.
Okay, thanks. Can I throw it over to Brandon to just practically speaking, what do you think of that as far as a solution for Norfolk? If we have, either a tenant or an owner of a property that's one address with more than one business, can we increase that maximum per business, not per address?
Thanks. I'd say that's a comment received today that we would review through the consultant. It usually does come down to the property owner and signing off, but if it's going to be the property owner where multiple businesses are on, so the property owner is going to be signing off on the application. And I think what you're looking at is the specification we have of per business and whether or not that can be changed, I guess. And I think that's something we could look at. Yeah.
Councillor Huffman.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to the presenters, just wondering if you could give me the number of attendees who were there at the public meeting.
Through you, Chair. So this is our statutory public meeting, but I'm assuming you mean the open house, the public open house, which was November 8th or 6th, November 6th. And unfortunately, we didn't have any attendees. We had two members of the public attend, but they were hoping to speak about a different issue. So staff were able to address that issue. We didn't have any attendees come specific to the CIP. Actually, sorry, forgive me, that's not true. One member of the public attended, and it was someone we had spoken to during one of the focus groups, actually. And so it was great to get to discuss with him again as well. But that was the open house. Throughout all of the engagement activities, we spoke to approximately 20 people. and received comments that way.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions? Because it's just feedback for you today, I do not enjoy brownfield development site. I was going to call them DCs, but they're not. They're tax incentives. So I would maybe like to see, I understand the merit behind them and why you do them. My concern is more about our financial position. So I suppose my question, and I don't need an answer today, but before a final decision is made, is how that would combine with our DC exemption that we have. And so what is the total contribution we would be looking to make for brownfield projects, and is that palatable for council? Sure,
Yep,
if you'd like.
if that's okay, for a preliminary response to that. So for some clarity and to signal the intent here is that with introducing a brownfield tax increment TIG program, the idea and confirmation would be in here that there would be no double dipping with the current development charge, brownfield development charge exemption. And it also signaling a change that when we look at the next DC study and bylaw to review that DC exemption and whether or not we would continue in that we would have this new incentive, and therefore the DC piece, which relates to our growth-related infrastructure, we may want to revisit.
And are they aligned with how we are affirming that a site is brownfield and all of that eligibility criteria? I wouldn't want to make one easier or harder, or I might want to make one harder. But
to the chair, that is a very good point, because we do have an application process and a verification justification process for what qualifies as brownfield and a council determination of that. So that's a very good point that we would need to ensure is part of any eligibility for this.
okay, and then my other comment would be, again, maybe just a bit of a sales pitch or some specific examples. I understand the merit behind it, but the creation of the tax increment grant program is sorry, is that the one we're calling it? It doesn't matter. It's the one where we would put together the plan to offset the housing, paying the property tax so that the homeowner would do the upgrades and then we'd recollect it later in assessment. Again, I understand the merit of the incentive, behind the incentive, and that it probably works. It's just a tough one for me to get behind politically when we're in such a financial tough spot, not only for the municipality, but for the residents of Norfolk. So to put together a package that says, if you can afford to upgrade your home, we'll pay for your property taxes. I know it will make its way back in assessment value to us. I'm just not sure that politically it's the right time and the right political climate to be putting a package together like that when some people are really struggling to pay their property taxes in the first place, period.
Thanks to the chair, and it's a good item to raise and review. Just a preliminary response, I guess, that currently the CIP program has this for, I believe it's for the rehabilitation of existing non-residential properties, such as might be a downtown revitalization project that would bring additional jobs and business expansion. It hasn't really been used a lot. I think there was twice in here over the last few years that this has been used. Currently, it's in the draft as proposed to keep, but that is something that I've also noted as our follow-up to review and whether or not should we put our objectives, I guess, in a different program, especially with putting in the new residential category.
Exactly. Maybe the money stays and it's to incentivize the new residential units as opposed to covering the property taxes over 6 years, but just food for thought, and we'll dig into that when the report comes back. And then my last comment would be, I too agree that a lot of this has been under-celebrated, and great job hearing that the economic development team filled out the full dollar value and the full program. That's a great start to bring the project back after a few years of hiatus. But I'm not opposed to setting aside a few extra dollars to really do a robust advertising initiative. I can still remember the year that Haldeman County put a significant amount of dollars into their CIP program and totally revitalized multiple downtowns in the municipality. So this is a great project to get behind that'll support the small businesses and the housing initiatives that we need across the community. So I'm in support of a few extra dollars to do a really great advertising program and then put together a comprehensive package demonstrating the wins of the businesses and the homes that we were able to help through this program to further market it, because it is a no-brainer, the concept. Councillor Columbus.
Are places of worship eligible?
Through you, Chair, I can speak to that. Yes, they would be. So organizations are eligible so long as they are the property owner or get an agent of the property owner, have consent of the property owner. That would also depend as well, though, on your official plan and zoning bylaw. So if an institutional use is permitted and existing, then that could continue. Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Van Passen.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I got to get my little nitpicky on the wording in here on the objectives of the draft. I think it's page 4. Let's see if I can find it. It talks about dealing with environmental sustainability and mitigate the effects of climate change. And in this debate quite often, the municipality is not in a position to mitigate climate change. That's more of federal and provincial responsibility, and they have the, because it's a larger scale, municipalities tend to work on adapting to climate change. So I wonder whether we might want to change the verbiage in that objective there a bit, just to recognize the reality of it. Lorelei knows I get a little nitpicky on these things once in a while, so.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, we can take that comment and make revisions.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands, so I'm assuming we're good to go here. Let me pull up the recommendation. I am looking for a mover and a seconder, please, that staff report CD 2501 regarding the community improvement plan update be received for information, and that any comments received as part of the public meeting be considered in a future recommendation staff report. Moved by Councillor Van Andrieschie, seconded by Councillor Berry. All in favor? Oh, Councillor Michele, did I miss you, or you're voting?
I'm voting, Madam Mayor.
Okay, I apologize.
I was seconding, but I'm voting now.
Yeah, that's true. Do I need to? You should ask them to do. Oh, Councillor Van Passen, good one. Is there anyone online that wishes to make any comments with regards to staff report CD 2501, because we are at a public hearing committee meeting? Good catch, Councillor Van Passen. Okay, all in favor? That is carried. We would have been back here for that report again. I am looking for a recommendation that the meeting be adjourned at 5:57 p.m. Moved by Councillor Huffman, seconded by Councillor Michele. All in favor? That is carried. Thanks so much, everyone.